And good morning. We welcome you to Meadowcreek Arena in Norcross, Georgia for the second annual 2018 5-Bar Showdown. Brian Rushing here with you this morning, along with my partner, the doctor, Patrick Anderson. As you see, we are catching the action midstream right now as we're wrapping up some of our first segment of competition today. Dr. Anderson, good morning. We welcome you. Certainly after some weather rolled through the area this morning, making the broadcast a little bit delayed, already the action has been hot and furious inside the arena, and it promises to stay that way throughout this two-day event.
Good morning, Brian. I agree. We've missed a little bit of the broadcast for you guys, but we are jumping right in because shortly we're going to have back-to-back dueling 800-pound squats in the next 5 minutes. Matt Sumner and Dennis Cornelius. Matt already hit an 8:10 second attempt, and Dennis hit a monstrous 8:70 on his second attempt. We do not have a score sheet, so we're going to be flying a little blind, Brian, but we'll figure it out.
Well, and in that light, I mean, you can think about all the things that have possibly gone wrong this morning. To have a broadcast is a bit of an advent anyway. To be able to do it this way, this is taking it back old school when it comes to broadcasting events of this nature. And already, before we even get to the lunchtime hour, we've seen a number of already solid performances on all three platforms this morning.
Yeah, actually, they've taken a break over on the weightlifting, but the morning session of the weightlifting actually has already been completed, and we've had powerlifting on two platforms. Currently, right now, they finished the squat on the middle platform, and we are actually squatting on the far platform with the big boys.
And as you folks cannot see it, but platform number 2, they're about to engage in the bench press, and we'll be switching back and forth here in just a moment from the finale of the squats on platform number 3 and then going to platform number 2 for the beginning of the bench press segment. So a lot of action going on here, and it'll be happening throughout the day today and even into tomorrow as something that Caleb Williams and Josh Rohr put together, a very solid effort on their part, this 5-bar showdown, sort of a melding of all the disciplines of weightlifting and powerlifting in one building.
Yeah, we were here last year, you and I, Brian, and it gets quite exciting when you look at the totals of the lifters doing both performances. What's considered the 5 bars, lifters competing in the weightlifting, the snatch and the clean and jerk, as well as the powerlifting, the squat, bench press, and deadlift, and you really develop a Superman total, which is what they're looking for. $1,500 was given to the winner last year overall in the men's and the women's division. A very near miss on the third attempt squat over on platform 3.
What we'll do is we'll go ahead and start switching now as we go into our bench press segment here at platform number 2, as this is our first lift in segment 2 this morning.
And again, we apologize. We do not have a score sheet because the power is just coming back up. So it's going to be very challenging for us to give you accurate of who's lifting. I'll be able to give you a rough estimate on the weight from just eyeballing it. And as we get going, we'll be able to get you up to speed.
I can see from the scoreboard over there on platform number 2 that it appears we had 3 white lights over on that initial bench press. So we've got a number there. We've got a good lift on that side. Now we'll take it back over to platform number 3.
So I'm listening to Gino to be able to give you guys an update. This is 672 for Matt Trahune over on platform 3. Matt's one of the local Georgia lifters that's put on quite a show for a number of years here. Very strong squatter, Brian.
Not able to connect there on that final attempt. You know, Dr. Anderson, this really has, for folks in the northern Atlanta metro area, in all parts of Georgia and even southeast lifters, this has become sort of an all-star event for at least the locals here in the area, and then certainly becoming a very solid event regionally for all of these competitors in this 2-day weekend.
Well, and absolutely, you're seeing some nationally ranked lifters come to the southeast. Up and coming, we'll see Matt Sumner out of New York, Dennis Cornelius. Gino announced him out of Nebraska. I thought he was in Oklahoma, but he's from the Midwest. So we've got big-name nationally ranked lifters. In fact, it looks like Matt Sumner is the lifter on platform 3. He did 8:10 on his second, so I'll have to see if I can hear what Gino announces. I imagine this is at least 8:26.
What we'll do is we'll try to see if we can go ahead and get this bench press in on platform number 2 before we go over.
It will be 837 on platform 3 for Matt's squat.
So it looks like that bench press is good over on number 2. We'll take it immediately back to number 3.
So Matt's an interesting lifter here, Brian. In the sport of powerlifting, he's unique in the fact he doesn't even wear the knee sleeves. It's extremely rare to see someone competing with no knee sleeves, and that might not sound like much, but you're talking an 837-pound squat with absolutely nothing on his knees. And you'll notice when you see this, Matt is just very, very strong in the squat. I think this is a big jump, might be a hair much based on what I saw his second look like.
And he's not going to be able to power through.
Yeah, I thought maybe somewhere around 826 based off his second was more in the range, but he could have very well been going for a PR there, 837.
Well, and I think that's one of the things when you look at the strategy, as I become more and more familiar with the sport, the initial lift in each discipline, you want to knock that lift out so you can get yourself a qualifying score. Then you want to make a progression from what I understand in that second lift. And then if you've gotten yourself to a range where you feel like you're very good at from the competition standpoint, the third lift can become something that you engage in from a PR standpoint, as we'll take it to platform 2.
Now on platform 3, when we get back there, Dennis is going for 892, 405 kilos. His second attempt at 870 came out of the hole very strong with not much of a sticking point. So I think this is well within his range. Depth is going to be the only issue. I thought the second attempt was borderline, but the strength is definitely there. And just so that those of you in the crowd realize what you're witnessing, Dennis currently is the record holder in the squat and the total in the 264-pound weight class. That's the world record holder, the biggest squatter in the world in raw powerlifting, and now he's actually going for 892 pounds, a gigantic raw squat. Looks very comfortable on the walkout. You'll notice Dennis is very controlled with all his squats.
We'll wait on the judges to see what they think.
And it was the perfect weight in terms of prediction. And the lift is 3 white lights.
Phenomenal effort. And we haven't even gotten to 11 a.m.
Yeah, that was an amazing third attempt, and it was the perfect third attempt. I actually think as little as 898 might not have been there. Dennis is just a powerhouse. I mean, he's an absolute superstar in our sport. Has bounced around and competed in multiple different venues. He's actually the world champion from the 2017 Worlds over in Belarus. So, as you were saying earlier, Brian, one of the best lifters on the planet lifting in this meet, coming all the way from the Midwest just to join us.
Well, and as this event begins to grow, because there's certainly an attraction here, there are a lot of folks, I would imagine, that once this event in its initial year last year, the word got out about it, this became a very attractive event as it brings some of the best, not just regionally, but in fact nationally. And I would imagine that resume of lifters will begin to grow, and the stratosphere of their quality will become better and better as we progress in years to come.
Well, and interestingly, tomorrow we're going to get to see in the women's division an Olympic lifter who actually competed in the 2012 Olympics in weightlifting, Holly Mangold. So she was the best super heavyweight women's U.S. lifter in 2012, and this will be her first time doing powerlifting. So she'll be doing both tomorrow. And so you're right, we're actually attracting top quality Olympic and powerlifters, and ultimately that's what will really make this competition even better, is to be able to see the crossover effect of lifters doing a discipline they don't normally do.
Dr. Anderson, as we make our preparations on platform number 3 for the bench press, I do want to give out a special thanks to Team Rohr Powerlifting for their work in the 5-bar showdown. One of the major movers in the conception of this event, Josh Rohr and his staff have put on a phenomenal work for this 2018 5-bar showdown. Team Rohr has a strong social media presence, as all of you should be aware of, on both Facebook and Instagram. You can find them at Team Rohr or at teamrohr.com. Again, a special thanks to Team Rohr for their support of the 2018 5-bar showdown. As we're just getting things started here this morning on our broadcast on YouTube. So glad that you've joined us.
Some of the people might not be aware out there, Josh actually does coaching internationally through online coaching. So he coaches lifters in Georgia locally face-to-face, but he actually has international lifters, European lifters that he does video coaching where he'll be, up at 3 in the morning watching someone do their workout somewhere in another part of the world, coaching them. So Josh really does a service for powerlifters the whole world.
Well, it's amazing how intriguing a sport like powerlifting, and even on the weightlifting side, how it really has jumped into the 21st century by creating an opportunity to do something like, who would have ever thought visual coaching from a different continent even, to where you're watching and you're able to give your pointers and you're able to give your input in a circumstance.
Well, yeah, and it is an amazing advance that we've moved to, because just in the time I was in the sport of powerlifting, it was unheard of to think you could be coaching someone from another country. The bench is back up and running on platform 2, and it looks like the weightlifting is starting back up on platform 1.
Yes, we do have weightlifting going over on platform 1. That's actually another broadcast that we have on YouTube throughout this 2-day weekend. This one on the Team Rohr page. If you have somebody that's wanting to tune in today and tomorrow, all they've got to do is search on YouTube Team Rohr, find the Team Rohr page, and you'll see the powerlifting segments throughout the course of the day. So we're getting things just going this afternoon. Already we've seen some phenomenal efforts in this early segment from the squats in both platform 2 and 3. Just getting things going over on platform number 2. We'll get to that once we're back to some of the action there, as they will be taking their second rotations here in just a moment. We've not quite started our first rotations this morning of the bench press over on platform number 3. Dr. Anderson, I would try to get you to glean some information for those that may not be aware just how this particular 5-bar showdown event took place. What was some of the conception of Josh Rohr and Caleb Williams sort of getting this together and making this event happen?
Well, Caleb is a world-class, one of the few lifters in the history of just weightlifting in general. He's a world-class powerlifter and then switched over to weightlifting and competed in the international level and became a world-class weightlifter. Well, Caleb and Josh had been friends from their powerlifting days, and so they had come together. Last year was the first year because Caleb was already putting on weightlifting meets throughout Georgia, and Josh was putting on powerlifting meets. And the 5-bar showdown came up as a concept to see what would really be the Superman and Superwoman total, because when you take the two disciplines, there's enough diversity that your advantages in one can be your hindrances in another. So it really creates kind of a strength and weakness situation. Powerlifters is notorious for you're lifting a greater amount of weight but over a much shorter distance. Weightlifters are lifting a lesser amount of weight but over a much longer distance, involves a lot more technique and just a lot more practice. You can pick up powerlifting much quicker than you can pick up weightlifting. And from my perspective, having competed for 30 years in powerlifting and never competed in weightlifting, I view weightlifting as much more impressive for the lifters to pick up who have never done it before. But last year we did notice that there was equal performances on both sides. So I don't think there's a specific advantage. I really think it depends on the individual lifter.
Well, I think it creates an intriguing circumstance to where you've got guys that are exclusively weightlifters. You have others that are exclusively powerlifters, to put them all in one venue and get them the opportunity to watch the best of the best, both regionally and across America, with some of the lifters that are starting to make their way into this competition. I would imagine there's a little bit of looking over to the other platforms saying, hey, this guy's at the top of his game. What would it take for me to get to that level? And I would imagine, kind of like the athletes wanting to be rock stars and vice versa, you probably see a little bit of that in this same venue.
Well, and absolutely, and you have a situation in weightlifting where they're in the Olympics. So every powerlifter, as much as they might want to stick with powerlifting, at least has had the thought or dream of competing in the Olympics. And currently the only avenue would be going through weightlifting. So it's a situation where you're going to have more powerlifters crossing over for that goal. And now what you're seeing in powerlifting is the CrossFit, what I call the CrossFit effect, because CrossFit and working out just for the average person has become much more commonplace. You'll see a lot of people doing the power lifts who would never have thought of powerlifting 20 or 30 years ago, just regular people who are just doing it to get in shape. And so you're having a lot more what we call raw lifters not putting on the equipment. And it's developed at huge numbers because now when you go to a competition, you have a tremendous amount of lifters who are doing powerlifting just as an addition to their CrossFit training or some other form of training. And in the sport of weightlifting, there's CrossFit lifts that are performed similar to the snatch and clean and jerk. So I actually think this 5-bar showdown could be something that could grow a lot more in the future as more people start to take part in it.
And from your perspective, I would imagine seeing this evolution of powerlifting happening before your eyes has got to be something that you might not have ever dreamed of, but at the same time, great times to see the newer generations of lifters come on and see this happening in front of you at such a fast pace.
Well, yeah, and I'm kind of crossing over 2 generations because when I got into the sport, there was not any equipment just because of the nature of the sport. It was just developing, and so everybody was raw. And then most of my entire career was equipped lifting, and now raw has just exploded in the last really 5 years, but it's been around, about 15 years where people really started more putting on raw competitions. And so I think it's the wave of the future. I think it's a lot less expensive. It's a lot easier to get people up and running. And for youth lifters, it's much more common to be able to get youth lifters into sport if all they got to do is just put a belt on, maybe some wrist straps or some knee sleeves.
Well, it looks like that we are just seconds away from platform number 3 getting started with their bench press segment. As you see, this initial foray into the bench press on platform number 3. That lift is up, and it's good. So, excuse me, this is platform number 2 that we're working, obviously the second rotation of lifts here this morning's segment. For those of you that are tuning in even later than when we first came on, initially set for a 9 a.m. start this morning, but thunderstorms that had ripped through the Midwest yesterday got into the Atlanta area, coming from north to south, and really wreaked havoc on the Atlanta metro area. A lot of rain, hail in a lot of the area, lots of heavy wind. Knocked out power to what estimates I heard up to 3 million people in the area. Now we're starting to get the action back with the power coming back about 45 minutes ago. And we are glad to be bringing the action to you this morning. And hopefully we won't have any more snafus going the rest of the way, as sometimes the weather just doesn't work out even with an indoor sport.
Well, I'm far from a meteorologist, but I believe we are good to go for the rest of today. There should not be any more weather. And Trey Cunningham, who's the director of the broadcast we're doing, and Josh Rohr, the meet director, have done an amazing job to even keep the meet going, because under the circumstances, I was impressed that they even got started. And we are fast getting up to speed. We're at a disadvantage because we don't have access to any score sheets, and we're easily a good 50 to 75 feet away from the platforms. So it's very challenging for us to tell you exactly what's going on right now because we can't see the lifter's name or the weight. Again, I can give you an estimate. It looks like on platform 2 on the bench you're watching now, this is going to be right around 100 kilos, about 220 pounds. But if you're watching this and you know that lifter, you know more than I do, because I cannot tell you the name of the lifter.
Well, and another part of the evolution of powerlifting is not just equipment, both on the person, on the athlete, as well as on the floor, but you take a look as the 21st century kind of evolves the broadcast and the fan friendliness of the event. This event has already gotten closer in year 2 than year 1 to the fans, while at the same time it might put us at a little bit of a disadvantage as to actually seeing the platform. But because of the technology that's available, we are able to stream this out to the entire world. So wherever you are, you can watch this same event with a pretty good standpoint.
Well, yeah, and ultimately people that are tuning in to watch the lifting, not you and I. So that's better that at least they can see the lifts.
And rest assured, that's good for everybody, at least speaking from this standpoint.
I'm with you on that one. But it will be something as we get going. We'll be able to give you a little more details. Again, this lifter on the bench right here, this is 226 pounds was the weight. The lift was no good. Platform 3, we are up and running on the bench, so we might be able to bounce around between 2 and 3. It looks like they're started up on platform 3.
Dr. Anderson, to those that are not very familiar, are just getting to the novice stage of powerlifting, there are 3 disciplines for each competition. Kind of give us an overview of what those 3 disciplines are and sort of what you're looking for out of those 3 disciplines from the athlete perspective.
Well, the lifts that we've already completed so far this morning is the squat, the first lift in powerlifting. And essentially what that is walking the bar out of a rack where the bar's on your shoulders and doing a deep knee bend so that the top of the thigh at the hip joint is below the top of the knee. So it's essentially just a deep knee bend, what most people are familiar with if you played football growing up or any sports where you involve lifting. A squat's a universal exercise. And the main thing with the squat is that the heaviest weights are lifted there. And as we saw today, an 892 squat by Dennis Cornelius, one of the best squatters, if not currently the best squatter in the world at 264. The bench press that we're watching now, this is more of a U.S. lift. Internationally, this is a lift that was popularized in the United States and has now come along where the other countries have joined up. But it's really a upper body exercise. So as you can see, the lifters are laying on their back, and it's predominantly the pec muscles, the shoulders, the biceps, triceps, and lats. And what you're looking for here is the lifters bringing the bar down to their chest and pausing. The referee gives them a verbal signal for them to lift the bar off their chest, and then a rack command at the top. And then at the end, we close with the lift of all lifts, really the truest test of strength in powerlifting, the deadlift. And it's called the deadlift, Brian, because the bar is at a dead weight position, and you've got to create all the momentum. The squat and the bench, you have the downward momentum. The deadlift has none of that, and it is the one that separates, especially come down to the total, Brian, because at the end of the meet, whoever is the better deadlifter has the advantage on pulling for the win.
And it's really intriguing that you look at this powerlifting competition, this crowd that's going to be here really gets amped up and really sort of brings an additional energy when the deadlift occurs. This place really does get more engaged to the deadlift segment.
It's definitely visually very exciting, and it's a lift that most all of us can relate to because it's a relatively simple concept of you just tell someone, I'm picking the bar up off the ground. You know, the other lifts seem a little bit more abstract and unique to our sport, but the deadlift is just a simple concept. Something's in front of you, Brian, and you got to pick it up.
Now, as we set our attention back to the bench press and sort of discussing that a little bit, this is the one thing that I'm beginning to find out about the bench press is this is a very technical lift as it relates to judging it, to where the athletes are being asked to do something on the command of the judge. It's not just what you might see at your typical fitness center when some guy's just kind of going back and forth on a bench press machine. This is a very technical exercise, and if you're not careful, you can really put yourself in a position where you actually bomb out of the bench press competition. Doesn't happen often, but it can be fatal if it does.
Yeah, and in the bench, it's the one where you have, as you said, the commands. You actually have 3 of them. You'll notice when the lifter takes the bar out, you'll be able to see just to the top left of your screen is a judge. You can just barely see on this screen. That's Dr. Vanessa Gale, the head judge on Platform 2. And the judge will give a start signal when the lifter is at arm's length, a press signal when the bar is motionless on the chest, and then a rack signal again when the bar is back at arm's length. And what you'll notice, Brian, that's interesting, especially when you have 2 platforms going, is there is a variety in technique. You'll see wide grip bench pressers that have their arms out very wide, and that's more of a chest and a pec exercise. And then you'll see narrower grip that involves the triceps a lot more.
So the individuality is all right as long as you're able to manage adequately the commands of the judge who's right there in front of the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of grip, there is a maximum grip, but it would be very challenging for most lifters to exceed that just because it'd be hard to hold the bar unless you're a really large lifter. And then in terms of the narrow grip, you can go as close as you want. Obviously, there's a certain part that it's very difficult if your hands are too close. But you'll see narrow grip benchers. The premise there, Brian, is you tend to get more drive off the chest. It's a more explosive, but you lose out in the fact that it's a longer movement. The closer your arms are, the farther the bar has to travel. In general, most powerlifters prefer a wider grip. This lifter you're watching now, this would be considered more of a moderate grip. That's about right in the middle. You'll often notice, Brian, when we get to the females tomorrow, some very light females that will use a maximum grip with a tremendous arch because of their flexibility, and they can cut the distance down to inches, actual inches, 2-inch, 3-inch bench press movements. And so at that point, it's a lot leverage.
Well, and again, it goes back to more of the technical side of this. If you are a power lifter and the bench press is not necessarily your most natural discipline where you can score well on, you can sort of take some technical advantages, if you will, to try to at least give yourself a better qualifying score so that you can make that not as obvious a weakness in the three disciplines.
Well, yeah, and as you're saying, like this lifter right here is very long-armed. So I suspect he's probably got a pretty good deadlift because the longer your arms are, the less distance the bar has to travel in the deadlift. But in converse, it means the farther it has to travel in the bench. So it is extremely rare to see a world-class bencher and a world-class deadlifter. Jennifer Thompson out of North Carolina would be an example, but that is a unicorn in our sport. You don't see that very often.
Well, and it's these little things, these little nuggets that you're offering up to those watching on YouTube this morning and afternoon that are going to make this so much nicer as we all get to learn together from your expertise of what's been 30 years of powerlifting. So as we engage here on platform number 3, that lift is completed. We'll wait on the scoring. And it looks like from the excitement there of the athlete that we've got a good lift so we can continue to move forward. Dr. Anderson, I will let folks know about Williams Weightlifting as they're a major piece of this 2018 5-bar Showdown. Located in Beaufort, Georgia, Caleb Williams is one of the founding fathers of this event. You can find out more about Williams Weightlifting USA by going to williamsweightlifting.com. That's williamsweightlifting.com. On the internet, Williams Weightlifting USA, a proud partner of the 2018 5-bar Showdown. Here along with Dr. Patrick Anderson, I'm Brian Rushing here with you. So glad that we could get the broadcast on the air today. Despite the weather that rolled through this morning, the Atlanta Metro, we are on in full power, everything rolling, and it looks like that because of that, and I will ask you about this a little bit later on in the broadcast, but with everybody now sort of getting into a flow and into a routine, some of the anxiety for some of these younger lifters should be sort of quelled at this point.
Yeah, in general, most powerlifters view the first squat is the one that really settles you down. That's why I personally recommend that people open light in the squat, because it's the one lift that the first time that you're stepping on the platform all day. And I always explain it to people, Brian, who work out in a gym. Picture if you went and did your normal workout and you worked all the way up to your top set, and then right as you were about to do your top set, somebody said, hey, we're going to walk you across the street to another building. We're going to put you on another platform, another bench, and we're going to have you do your biggest set of the day in a totally different setting. Well, nobody would do that in a gym because, that would seem like crazy. You would say, well, I need to warm up. Well, you don't get a chance to do that. You can't walk out to the platform and say, I'm going to do, 135, 225, 315. You have to do your first lift in a foreign environment with a whole different visual. Everything is looking differently. So the first squat for me, and I did it for 30 years, was still butterflies. I always said, if I'm ever not nervous, that's my time to retire. And I was always nervous before the first squat.
And so by getting that lighter weight on there, you're able to somehow get a qualifying score, sort of get those butterflies out of the way, and then you can get back to business for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and I also viewed it as 9 lifts is a lot to put on your body if you tax yourself on each one. So if you can make your openers warm-ups, you essentially cut 33% of your physical demand down, and you make it where your openers are warm-ups so that you're really only having to do 6, taxing lifts, and really your third attempt should be the taxing one. And I always viewed it that way as a much more strategy. A lot of lifters, though, go for broke. You'll see world-class lifters that open near max and basically figure I got 3 shots at it. So there is different philosophies on that.
As we look back to the action over on platform number 3. Now we'll switch it over to number 2.
You'll also notice, Brian, a lot of made lifts on the bench press, particularly in raw powerlifting. Tomorrow, those of you that are watching will get to see equipped with bench shirts. There's a lot more misses in bench shirt powerlifting. Raw powerlifting, just the mechanics of not having to wear a shirt, you can predict a lot more accurately what you're capable of. You'll see some misses on third attempts, but you'll routinely see in raw powerlifting entire flights go by where nobody misses an opener, and sometimes nobody even misses a second, particularly the women. The women tend in our sport to have less ego and not miss as many lifts. This bencher we're watching here, Brian, is an example of a close grip. You see that grip right there? Much, much narrower.
And I would imagine for those lifters, I mean, in essence, you're working and preparing for competition so that on the day of competition, more times than not, you've already got a program in place. You've got a game plan that you want to engage, and you really don't want to try to deviate from that all that much, I would imagine.
Well, you should, and most of the elite lifters do. It becomes very much a science. When I was competing or when I'm coaching someone, I could tell you within probably 2 or 3%, sometimes even 1% of what they were going to do on that day. Now, there are variances, for example, come deadlift time where you might need to change your attempts for strategy. And certainly unusual circumstances. You might have an injury in the squat that affects your deadlift, things like that. But in a general sense, a world-class lifter like Dennis Cornelius that's here today, if we went over and talked to him, he would be able to tell us pretty accurately where he thinks he's going to be at within a narrow range. So he squatted 892. I suspect, now I didn't get a chance to talk to Dennis before today, that he knew coming in that he was probably good for somewhere between, say, 881 and 903. And 892 happened to be where he landed. But it's not a situation where most of the world-class and elite lifters are wanting to do a lot of thinking on the day of the meet, because that's also wasted energy.
Well, and without question, 892 pounds is more than enough to make most people in this building ooh and ah a little bit.
Well, I would go so far as to say I'm considered pretty knowledgeable in the sport of powerlifting, and looking in this room, I don't believe, don't hold me to this, but I don't believe there's another human being who has squatted 892 other than Dennis in this room. In fact, there's only, just looking around the room, maybe 3 or 4 lifters who've ever squatted 800 that are in this room. So 892, Dennis is in an elite group. And that's not just this room. That's almost any room you've ever been to. As I said, he is the world record holder in the 264s. Now, he was completing in the super heavyweights in this competition, so he was a little bit heavier, so it wouldn't have been comparable. But he actually has squatted more, 850 pounds, Brian, than any human being ever has in the IPF Raw category at 264. So,
Patrick, I can promise you I've got some power equipment back home that I can promise you could not move almost 900 pounds the way that he was able to do that this morning before lunchtime even.
And wait till you see him come out in the bench. As amazing as his squat is, he's also a world-class bencher, and he's probably, I would suspect, going to bench in the upwards of 570. I don't think he'll quite be at 600, although he's heavier, and body weight tends to help your bench. So, again, I haven't spoken to get a chance to speak with him today. And if you want to know how amazing Dennis is, the word is he's entered in tomorrow's competition. He's planning on being back here tomorrow morning and doing 9 attempts in equipment. Now, that is subject to how he does today, obviously if he tweaks something. But he's planning on competing again tomorrow, Brian. Most lifters that are competing tomorrow are at home resting today. Dennis is so amazing he's doing a meet on his day before his meet.
Well, I mean, you got 2 days to a weekend. Why not?
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't even tell those of you at home who've never competed, just the concept of doing a full meet raw and a full meet gear back-to-back, how amazing that is, let alone with the numbers Dennis will put up.
Well, it is something to behold. I mean, when you begin to see plates upon plates upon plates put on a rack, and then you begin to see the bar actually bend on the shoulders of the athlete, you know you're seeing something special in the world of powerlifting.
Well, yeah, and as soon as you're crossing in the raw competition, 600-pound squats are excellent squats. And, a meet like a local meet in Georgia, you might see a handful, if that, 600-pound squats. 700 is truly elite. In a local meet in Georgia, you might not even see any, or one or two. Even in the nationals, you're starting to hit rare categories. But 800 is just world class anywhere. And as we said, Dennis was almost at 900.
So we keep looking over at platform number 2. That lift is not going to be good there on the bench press, as we have 2 platforms.
So now on platform 3, I can at least give you the weight just from looking at that right there. The 2 reds and a blue is 165. There could be some change on the outside, but 165 would be 363. So I would venture that we're somewhere in the 375 range here, give or take, depending on what's. Yeah, I can't see the sides to give you the actual weight. And look at this, Brian. That is an excellent fight. Let's see what the judges say. Lift is good. That was a perfect attempt.
Now we'll take it back over to platform number 2. So we get the command, and this lift is not going to happen. Now, there's a couple things that I saw in the previous lift on platform number 3 that I would want you to kind of examine for us that are watching this event. The hands seem to have gotten a little bit uneven, and there was no red light for it that we saw. Apparently that's something that is okay when it comes to the bench press, as long as there's no downward movements, which we did not see on either side.
Yeah, that's one of those calls that, as someone who's been in the sport for over 30 years, it changes so much. It drives a lot of us crazy, because there have been, over the course of time I've been lifting, numerous interpretations of the rule and actual changes in the wording. And what it's really come down to now is the entire bar cannot go back down. But they do allow, just because if the bar is slightly uneven, you're going to notice one side will dip slightly, because just the law of physics. If one arm goes ahead of the other, the end of the other bar has to dip a little. But essentially what cannot happen is the bar cannot go back down once you receive your press command. But it is a judgment call, and that lift was borderline. I thought it was a good lift, and I would have given it to him. But, yeah, you'll see some meets where a lift is turned down that you thought was good, and just like any other sport, vice versa.
And I guess that's what also creates the importance of having 3 officials, 2 flanked to the sides and then 1 directly in front, to sort of examine what's going on and give an objective view. Certainly you're looking for 2 out of 3 white lights to judge that to be a good lift.
Absolutely, and from the side judges are often looking at the butt staying on the bench, the feet, because the head judge has a more blocked view of that. The head judge has a much easier view of whether the bar goes back down. A side judge might notice it goes down on one side, but it's more difficult to see if the entire bar goes down. So the premise behind 3 judges is that it's supposed to cover all aspects. But just like any sport, there's going to be controversies in how the judges interpret.
Well, and one of the more useful things about this is from the athlete's perspective, many of the judges that are judging this morning's segment, they find themselves in the heat of competition as well. And because of that, they have a perspective that you may not necessarily have in a lot of other sports, to where you've had former athletes refereeing and judging other sports, but not necessarily concurrently.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer. Some of the judges that don't compete get upset when I say this, but I'm a big believer that it's really important that if you are a judge, that you've competed at some point in your life. Just because it doesn't mean you can't learn the rules, it doesn't mean you can't be a judge. But there's a level of sometimes where you see judges that are looking for finding a reason to give a red light, whereas the way I was always taught as a judge, and I'm a national referee, is that the light should be starting on white. When a lifter walks to the platform, your light should be on white, and the lifter has to earn a red. They don't have to earn the white, they have to earn the red. And if you judge that way, you'll just be a much more consistent judge and a much more fair judge. This isn't figure skating. You shouldn't be looking for a reason to find a rule infraction. Now, with that being said, when someone doesn't follow the rules, like the lifter who just came out, didn't even touch his chest, never actually got the press signal, that's clearly no lift, and there's no reason that lift should be passed, and it wasn't. So I'm not advocating giving away lifts, but if you're not sure, it should be a white light.
And to sort of translate the ruling on the bench press there, just like a pitcher in baseball would have to come to a discernible stop when he's in a set position, that's essentially what you've got to do on the chest, is come to a discernible stop, then get the call from the official to finish the lift. Once that happens, you're good to go.
Well, and I like the way you say discernible, because the rule book always used to say motionless. And if you study the laws of physics, and really intelligent people have pointed this out to me, you could drop the bar as fast as you want and have it bounce off your chest. And according to the laws of physics, it actually had to stop at some point because it changed directions. So at some point, you can argue it was motionless. Of course, we can't visibly discern that. So the way you described it is more accurate. The judge has to be able to see. I think the word in the rule book says visibly motionless. I don't think it says discernible. But they have to be able to visually see the motion stop so they can give a press signal. Because if not, you could just free fall it and make the argument, well, it did stop at some point, no matter how briefly.
And you talk about technically the art of motion and the anatomy that goes into these disciplines. There are a lot of smart individuals in this room, and the technical aspects and the things that they know about the sport really, really are at a very high level. So you can get into some very in-depth conversations throughout the course of an event of this nature.
Well, absolutely, and that's something that has definitely advanced in my time in the sport. When I first got into the sport, it was very much the mentality of you just see the weight and you lift it, and it was whoever's the strongest wins. And partially for me, because I wasn't that strong, I had to learn all the techniques and tricks in order to be able to work my way up. But now it has become, of course, with the internet, with everything, it has become much more widespread for people to be able to communicate their study and research and advancements and then pass it on to the next person. And so now you have just amazing depth of research out there on training, on nutrition, on technique, on all the laws of physics, recovery time. I mean, there's just a lot out there, Brian.
So we continue with our bench press action here this morning at the 5-Bar Showdown. Some of our sponsors that we want to thank this morning: SBD Apparel, a proud sponsor of the 5-Bar Showdown, a global sportswear brand available in 34 countries and online to over 200 countries. So you can shop online at sbdapparel.com. A special thanks to SBD Apparel for their support of this 5-Bar Showdown. So we continue here with the bench press. Looking at the action on platform number 3. Brian Rushing here with you this morning, along with the Dr. Patrick Anderson. So glad that you could join us here from the Meadowcreek Arena in Norcross, Georgia. Suburban Atlanta effectively is where we are today. It's over there on platform number 3. That lift will not be completed, so we'll continue to move forward. Meadowcreek Arena, a great venue, as it offers enough size here for a lot of the guys to go behind the curtain and get some of the work that's necessary for them to get done, while at the same time making a very fan-friendly venue. Great sight lines for those that are in the seating area here checking out the action. And certainly for you at home, Dr. Trey Cunningham has done a phenomenal job of setting up these cameras in such a way where you can get a very up-close and personal view of all the action that transpires on our 2 platforms for this broadcast, the other platform on the weightlifting side on the other YouTube channel that we're utilizing this weekend.
Yeah, we've been coming out here, Brian, for quite a while. This is probably 10, maybe even 12 times I've announced the meet out here. The state championships has been put on out here for several years. And so Josh is very familiar with this, and you're right. It's a big venue. It's what would be Meadowcreek High School's basketball gymnasium. And so half of the room is the platforms that you're watching, and then behind that, as Brian was saying, is the warm-up area. And it's very expansive. A lot of times at local meets, you're stuck in a narrow area trying to warm up. This is not a problem in this gymnasium.
Well, and you take a look with When you're competing in a competition of this nature, how important are the amenities at an event like this? Like behind the curtain, what are some of the things that the athletes are looking at and looking for as it relates to their preparation for their day of meet?
Well, and it's interesting you say that, Brian, because Josh is known for being one of the best in the world in terms of putting on meets. He's put on national meets, so a meet of this nature for him is something that he's well within his limits. And what he does is he puts little things that make a big difference. For instance, in the warm-up room, one of the big things that drives us lifters crazy is that the equipment you use is oftentimes not the same as what you use on the platform. So as I said earlier, you do all your warm-ups and then you step out and the platform looks different. The weights, the rack, everything's different. Josh is very good about his warm-up room equipment matching his platform equipment. He's very good about having all the score sheets up and running so you can track your lifts, know when you're going to lift, what time you're going to lift. Now today, of course, we had Mother Nature interrupt and we had some power outages that threw that off. But yeah, Josh is known for going above and beyond in terms of, in fact, I had someone from the crowd say to me that they noticed how the judges in the powerlifting are all dressed in uniform. And that stood out to them because it made them look just more professional. And that's definitely related to Josh, because I've been at USAPL meets, USA powerlifting meets that did not have that as a local meet where the judges really were all in uniform. And it takes it to a higher level. And then, of course, they have the world-famous Gino powerlifting announcing the meet. So that always takes it to a higher level, because if Gino's at your meet, it means you're putting on a bigger meet.
Well, and all of this brings us to a simple point. Josh Rohr and certainly Caleb Williams from the weightlifting side want to make this an elite event and make it really a bit of an all-star event, if you will, and that's why they've put themselves together in a room and worked out all these details. And Josh, really from the powerlifting side, it is the details, and what Josh Rohr is so good at is putting together these details to make it an event that you don't just accept coming to, but you want to get here. You want to circle the date on your calendar and make preparations for being here, because it is one of those highlight events throughout the course of a calendar.
Well, and Josh and Caleb both being former and current, because Josh is still competing lifters, they recognize the difference in those little touches. I mean, Josh has competed in the World Championships before. He competed in the Open Worlds in 2009. Josh is a former collegiate national champion. He's competed on the national stage. Caleb's competed both in the nationals in powerlifting and weightlifting, in the World Championships in powerlifting. And so lifters definitely recognize the little differences mean a lot. And it makes a big difference, because when lifters go to another meet after being at a Josh meet, sometimes they realize it's not always like Josh puts on the meet.
Well, now, Dr. Anderson, you touched on something. As these events take on a bigger platform, as they become more and more ubiquitous to the world of powerlifting, and certainly with folks being involved in fitness sports, you're going to have more and more newcomers to the sport. And I would imagine that an event like this, if you are a relative newcomer to the sport, the weather today sort of setting everything back with a power outage earlier in the day and so on and so forth could really sort of convolute your preparation on a day like today. What are some of the things for new lifters that could be pitfalls to their preparation even on the day of an event that would really sidetrack their best effort?
Well, the interesting thing that hit me was we were staying at a hotel that's only a couple miles away, and the power did not go out. But some of the meet staff that was at another hotel that's not far away, their power did go out. And so the first thing that hit me was, think if you were a lifter this morning and your alarm was set for whatever time and your power went out. You know, all of us have had that nightmare when we were in high school or college about oversleeping for a final exam. Could you imagine if you had to be at weigh-ins? Because the weigh-ins for the weightlifting started as early as 6:30 and the powerlifting at 7 a.m., so you could oversleep. So that would be the single biggest thing to me, would be just getting to the venue. Now, an interesting aspect when you get here is, because the power was out, we had no air conditioning. And in Georgia in July, air conditioning is an absolute must. And when you're a power lifter, a large power lifter, it becomes even more critical. And in a room, Brian, as you're aware, because you could feel it, that was filled with weightlifters and powerlifters, it was getting extremely warm. Now, already since the power's been on, I wouldn't say it's cool in here, but it's noticeable that it's not as muggy as it was. But that would be a big factor. If I was coaching a lifter today, that I would have immediately said to them, you either need to start hydrating more, maybe see, like I actually went out to my vehicle and sat in the air conditioning for about 10 minutes before the broadcast just to cool down. I might have even done that if I had a lifter here, have him go out and sit in a vehicle just to cool down, because if you're already starting to deplete, both fluid and your metabolites, you're going to be in for a long day.
Well, and unfortunately, it's easy to do that, and by the time it's actually happened, it's oftentimes too late for you.
Well, yeah, new lifters, yeah. In fact, as a power lifter and then a doctor, I can understand the physiology. I would suspect we're going to see lifters cramping up later in this competition, that exactly what you just said is going to happen. They didn't prepare and aren't preparing even now as the meet is going, and it's going to hit them come deadlift time, because that's when it's too late. At that point, you've passed the part where your body is going to be able to replenish before the competition ends. The other strategy, when you asked about strategy that I could see being an issue, is because the score sheets weren't up, it was very difficult to know when you were the lifter. And so it takes very astute coaching and being alert, because typically in powerlifting there's a score sheet where Brian Rushing, you're the lifter, 5 lifters out, 4 lifters out, 3 lifters out. Well, you don't have that when there's no score sheet. The announcer can't possibly be announcing 5 lifters out. So you have to be a little bit more in tune to know when it's your turn to lift. In fact, we had an interesting scenario that I've never seen, and I've been in this sport 30 years. We had one of the weightlifters come out, and he did his opening attempt before the judges were even seated in the platform and lifting had started. So he literally did the attempt, set the bar down, and then looked around and realized he was the first lifter, but the competition hadn't started. So he had to come out and do his lift for the actual judges a few minutes later.
Yes, I was actually able to watch that, and I thought it was part of an intermission routine or something. Like I'd never seen that before. It was a very unusual circumstance. Now, as it turns out, it was on the weightlifting side, and he nailed it, but it made a long day even longer.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing to see somebody do a warm-up on the platform and then not realize there was no judges.
Here with you at the 5-Bar Showdown in Norcross, Georgia. Brian Rushing here along with Dr. Patrick Anderson. So glad that you could join us today for what promises to be a weekend full of phenomenal powerlifting action that we'll be bringing to you throughout these 2 days on YouTube. As we've got action over on platform number 3 at this moment. Still engaged in the bench press segment. We've completed the squats. We're engaged in the bench press right now, and then momentarily, well, in a little bit, we'll be taking you to the deadlift segment, which will certainly gather the attention of the folks that are here watching from that perspective. I guess from a fan's perspective, Dr. Anderson, one of the really neat things about being an event of this nature is you're here watching somebody from one side or the other. You get to actually take a look at the other side and sort of wonder, hey, what is the appeal? Why are these people sitting on the other side of the arena? What am I going to get to see that they're now watching with routine?
Well, and I think that would be the way that this competition would grow the most, is that when you start seeing top flight performances on both sides, that you're going to get more curiosity of, what would it be like if we took a few of our best lifters and had them do the 5-bar, and then the weightlifting took a few of their best lifters and did the 5-bar, because you'd really start to see that world-class athletes would be able to shine. I mean, the best of the best would come out on top. And I, as somebody who's not ever competed in weightlifting, I'm enjoying watching it, just because to me it is such a different sport than what we do. A lot of people that don't know, they'll come up to me and say, oh, I understand you're a weightlifter, non-lifters or family or friends. And I always correct them, because to us, powerlifting and weightlifting are two completely different venues. In fact, I would always address it as Olympic lifting, because weightlifting just refers to anyone picking up weights. But in actual correct pronunciation, weightlifting is the snatch and clean and jerk. Powerlifting is the squat, bench press, and deadlift. Where you'll notice the biggest difference, Brian, in terms of switching over is the bench press. Because if you view the snatch and clean and jerk, the elements of those lifts also complete a squat and a deadlift. There's parts of those exercises crossing over, because a clean and jerk and a snatch, you have to do a deadlift to get the bar off the ground. In the clean and jerk, you're going into a front squat position. So there's a very much crossover. But the bench press is exactly opposite to what Olympic lifters would want to do. In fact, most weightlifters would avoid it because it tightens up your shoulders, which actually hurts your flexibility to be able to do the overhead lifts. So that's the lift that's very rare to see somebody who's an Olympic lifter that can also bench press.
Some fabulous insights this morning from Dr. Patrick Anderson here in our opening segment of the action today. We'll have an afternoon segment today, and then we'll get back here on Sunday. We'll have a lot of weight classes, both male and female competitions through the weekend. There's a little something for everybody at this competition from both the powerlifting and the weightlifting side. And I think that's one of the things that makes this event really inclusive for new lifters, is the opportunity to where they really kind of put themselves in a category, and there really is something for everybody here.
Absolutely, and a lot of high school athletes just working out for whatever sport they're playing, they do both of powerlifting and weightlifting lifts. So the clean and jerk is an extremely popular exercise, at least the power clean portion of it for football players per se. Obviously the squat and deadlift are as well. So a lot of high school athletes or people just looking to, test their strength, they're already maybe 75% of the way there just from the training they do. And if you do CrossFit, anyone out there listening who does CrossFit, you already do squat, you already do deadlift, you already do cleans, and they do a variety of snatches or snatch squats. So the bench press is not very common in CrossFit, but it is performed. But you would be able to already have, 80% of the lifts performed if you've just done CrossFit for any length of time.
Checking out the action on platform number 2 at the moment. Now we switch it over to number 3. And that looks simplistic enough on that lift.
Very good lift. And again, I can just give you an estimate on there. That's upwards of about 380 pounds on the bar. I can't see what little plates are on the outside, but the 2 reds and the blue is 165 kilos, which would be 363.
And the relative ease of that lift makes it look like that might have been the first rotation. Of course, we are kind of flying blind in that regard, as we don't have the advent of the scoreboards that are in front of us. We're looking at it from a very, very tight angle and doing the best we can to read any of it, as we will get that information soon enough.
Hey, we're starting to get some
right on cue
up. So it looks like what we have on platform 3 is Matthew Traherne with 374.
And on platform 3, they are on their first rotation of this particular weight class.
Hey, now we're up to speed. We're going to actually be able to give you names and body weight, or and weights, how much was being lifted. I'm not sure if we can still see the lights or if the lights will pop up somewhere. That'll be the next step. But on platform 2, we've got Jackie Cheng, and on platform 3, Tracy Curry will be your next lifter. So if you're at home and you're looking for a specific lifter, we're going to actually be able to start getting you up to speed.
Now, Jackie Cheng, over on platform number 2, did something prior to cutting to him on that platform. He actually got to the judge's side of the bar and actually went under the bar before engaging. A new technique, something that I had not seen today.
Yeah, you typically won't see the bigger guys do that. I know for me that would probably be not a wise choice. Over here on platform 3, this is an example of that narrow grip I was telling you about, Brian. Very narrow grip for Tracy. That was 402, 400-pound bench press raw as an opener. So we're getting some huge benchers going. Well, that is a gigantic opener.
Dr. Anderson, I could say the same thing. What Mr. Cheng did on platform number 2, if I tried to do that, I would pull a muscle or herniate something. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, now on platform 3, we are going to have Dennis Cornelius, who is by far the best lifter in this competition. First, we're going to look at James Miller on 2. James Miller's got 341 on the bar for his second attempt, Brian.
It seems like he's got plenty in the tank there for that offering.
Now we're going to go to, this is Dennis Cornelius. Remember I said to you earlier that I thought he might be close to a 600 bench. This is a 545 opener. Now Dennis is heavier. He's competing in the supers today. So those of you who are familiar with Dennis in the past, he's usually upwards of a 570 bencher. We'll see where he's at today off of this. He looked tremendously strong in the squat.
From the looks of things, to coin a phrase from another sport, that was a layup.
Yeah, very solid lift. Not as explosive as I've seen Dennis in the past. Doesn't appear like he would be in the 600 range today. But Dennis actually is one of those rare lifters who usually gets stronger as the weight goes up. So I would not be surprised if he's going to be jumping. I would say off of that one, maybe 10 kilos, maybe go 567.
As now we have over on platform number 3, Stephen Leone. At 314 pounds is his attempt. Stephen Leone seemed to handle that with plenty in the tank, as he is in his second rotation, so we'll see what he does with his third offering coming up in just a little bit. Dr. Anderson, for those that are still new to the sport and not necessarily understanding what's transpiring there, is from time to time you'll see the spotters and those that are actually helping the lifters in their lifts. They'll actually bring what looks to be nothing more than a wire brush out to sort of rake away at some of the grip areas. What's the intent behind that? What's the purpose of doing that as a help to the lifters?
Essentially, the majority of the lifters are going to come out with chalk on their hands. It's magnesium carbonate. It's basically just to dry sweat so that you can actually grip the bar a little better. Well, what happens is the bar, if you can see, it's a little difficult from this distance. It has a knurling on it. It has a grip on it. And after so many lifters have come out with chalk on their hands, that grip actually becomes filled with chalk to the point that you actually don't feel the knurling. So there's a certain part where you can have so much chalk caked on the bar, it actually makes it harder to grip. So what the spotter loaders and the platform crew will do, especially come deadlift time, is come out and wire brush that chalk off just so you can access the knurling and get a little better grip.
The game inside the game. As we go back over to platform number 3 is Logan Barrett. According to what we have in front of us, a 150 kilo second attempt, 330.69 pounds.
And here's another narrow grip bencher, Brian. You can see that lift looks good.
While I've got a moment, I want to thank another one of our sponsors for the event, Roswell Barbell, the pinnacle of strength training and powerlifting in North Atlanta. Roswell Barbell is a state-of-the-past facility that uses modern techniques proven for success and excellence in powerlifting, Olympic lifting, bodybuilding, and strongman competition. Find Roswell Barbell at www.roswellbarbell.com. That's www.roswellbarbell.com. A lot of sponsors making this event possible and making it as substantive as they have this weekend. As we're over on platform number 2, that's Drew Thompson with an attempt. Now as we look over on platform number 3 here in just a moment, we'll have Keith Osayande, a 157.5 kilo lift over on platform number 3. So glad that you've joined us as we near the midday here in the metro Atlanta area. Norcross, Georgia is where we are today. Brian Rushing along with Dr. Patrick Anderson for this opener of the 2018 5-bar Showdown. Osayande finishes his lift. So we have on platform number 1 the weightlifting segment of this. All of that happening over on the other YouTube channel that we've set up for this event today. You see platform number 2, we're engaged in the bench press opportunities. So we'll quickly move over to Matt Sommer on platform number 3.
Now this is a pretty good sized bench for Matt, 347. If you've watched him in the past, the lift is no good, but Matt was notorious for Brian being unique in the fact that he could squat over 800 pounds and was never able to bench even 300 pounds. He would bench 270, 280, even 290. So his bench is clearly up, although that lift wasn't successful. It wasn't that far off. So that'll be interesting to watch as Matt might be growing into his own. He's a young man and working his way up to a 400-pound bench.
Dr. Anderson, is there a point of experience, a number of years? Is there a magic number to where some lifters, by and large, just seem to get it?
Yeah, it's interesting because it depends on the lift. The bench press, I've always felt like as you get older, there's a certain part that your upper body just has to kind of grow into to be able to be towards your max bencher. So some lifters are good naturally, but in general, to really reach the top level, it's a lift that takes longer to get there. The deadlift, in converse, there's lifters out there who just the first day they go into a gym, they pull 500 pounds. So the deadlift seems to be something that's a little bit more of a natural gift, and the bench seems to be something that you build. Now, technique is a bigger factor in the geared benchers because you got to work out the shirt, and that's a whole different science. A lot of the benchers that do both have to balance that, but most of the lifters that are just doing one, you basically train for that lift. So there's a different technique using a shirt than you would using raw bench.
Platform number 2, Manuel Para-Chavez will be making an attempt at 125 kilos on his third offering, 275.5 pounds. Para-Chavez not going to be able to complete that lift, as he'll carry a previous score in with him into the deadlift segment. Dr. Anderson, I'll kind of throw this out there from a fan's perspective, and you tell me how accurate this might sound. Where baseball might have a home run competition during their all-star events, basketball would have a slam dunk contest during their events. I would imagine the deadlift is probably akin to those types of events.
Kind of. It's definitely the one that you can actually put together deadlift-only competitions. The Arnold has a pretty famous one because, as you said earlier, the visual for the crowd, there's no spotters, there's nobody in the way. It's also much easier to judge. There's not as many rule infractions. But interestingly that you said that about a more of a specialty competition. They don't do it often, but one of the really interesting ones I've seen every once in a while over the years is what's called a two-man deadlift, where kind of like you're saying an exhibition would be a home run contest or a slam dunk contest. Having a two-man deadlift is where literally two lifters stand inside the bar and together lift the weight. And, of course, the weights lifted are much, much greater. There have been two-man deadlifts done in the 1,500-pound range. I myself did one with my brother that was 1,100 pounds. And at the time, I mean, we were both about 600-pound deadlifters. It's interesting because it's visually very impressive because you see so much weight on the bar. But for a lifter, it's actually relatively easy because as long as you sync your performance, you're kind of pulling each other along. But it's very visually impressive. You can imagine if you saw, 11, 12, 13, 1,400 pounds on a deadlift.
But a tandem deadlift, I would imagine, in that regard, which we will not see today, would probably, as long as everything is in sync, is an added level of technical skill to it that is engaged in something that's usually just raw power.
Yeah, there's definitely a timing component because no matter how strong you are, if you have, let's say, 1,200 pounds on the bar, if the other guy doesn't pull at the same time you do, it's not going anywhere because there's not a person alive who can pull 1,200. So there is a timing component. You do have to sync when you start the lift. The other competition that's gotten kind of popular as an exhibition is a bench press for reps competition where you'll pick a certain weight. Sometimes it's body weight or 225, and you just see how many reps you can do. And that's another one that would be kind of like a slam dunk or a home run contest.
So we move our attention over to platform number 3 as it looks like Stephen Jiang, we're making an attempt at 175 kilos, his second offering here in the bench press.
Yeah, nearly 400 pounds, 385 for a raw bench, Brian, is getting up there. That's a big, big-time bench press. And the lift appears to be 3 whites.
And from the reaction, he obviously nailed it. Oftentimes we'll see a fist pump, we'll see some emotional reaction. Every once in a while we'll see dancing, which is exactly what we saw there, which usually that's a good sign you nailed it.
Yeah, it could have been a personal record attempt for him. That's something for powerlifters that kind of is what our goal is you'll hear the term PR, and that simply means a personal record, more weight than you've ever lifted before.
DeCarlo Miles over on platform number 3. You're seeing that. It seems like DeCarlo Miles at 175 kilos has plenty left for a third offering a little bit later on in this competition. As we near the noontime hour here, as we've been going at it, this is our completing our third hour. So we got a little bit of a late start today, but actually for this crew to get everything going in the timely fashion they were able to, despite the issues we had with the weather, is certainly a mark of just how skilled and organized this event has become.
Over on platform 3 here, Brian, we got Matt Traherne. He was the lifter who gave a good run to a 672 squat. This is a 402 bench. Very wide grip. Remember we discussed grips earlier. This is just about a maximum grip. Now that was an uneven lockout. What did the judges say? That lift was good. Appeared to me like he might have locked out one arm first.
Platform number 2, Jordan Frazier trying to get to a locking position, unable to do that. As he'll miss on that offering. So we started this morning's segment. You were not able to watch much of any of the squat segment, as you'll get to see more of that this afternoon. We're now engaged in the bench press, and then we'll have the deadlift here in just a wee bit. So we have over on platform number 3, Tracy Curry.
This is a big bench, Brian, 424, and look how narrow his grip is. That you could call a closed grip bench press. Many of us, that would be where we would put our grip when we do closed grips as just a training exercise. Tremendous tricep strength.
A good effort, and he's pleased with that.
Now watch the grip difference on this lifter here. We just went from a closed grip to a max wide grip. Powerlifting fits all shapes and sizes, Brian.
Well, and again, you take a look at what Tracy Curry was able to do in that bench press. It would stand to reason, and certainly he looks athletic enough to do it, that he would put together a very solid deadlift number here later on in this competition.
Yeah, generally the longer armed, leaner lifters, taller lifters are better deadlifters. It's just a leverage situation. And then come deadlift time, Brian, you'll also see the difference between the sumo deadlifter, which is the wider stance, and of course the conventional deadlifter, which is the narrow stance. And we'll see quite a bit of both of those today.
We'll try to get James Miller to complete his lift prior to Dennis Cornelius, who's over on platform number 3. Miller.
These are dueling benches. That's 352 for James. And now Dennis, I had predicted 567. He was a little bit more conservative, 562. I think this is a smart choice. I think he'll have this in him, and then we'll get to see what he's got left in him. And if you watch Dennis here, Brian, he is extremely technically proficient on the bench. He's got a very specific groove.
Dr. Anderson, you might have been about 5 pounds off, but it was no less impressive, as that made the crowd ooh and ah a little bit here, as that lift from Mr. Cornelius, very, very solid.
Well, and those watching at home who are familiar with Dennis probably would agree. On his opener, I actually thought he didn't look as explosive as I expected. That lift actually looked a little bit more explosive. So what could very well be going on is a situation where he corrected a technical mistake or something that he wasn't in the right groove on the opener. And now I wouldn't be surprised off of that lift. I would suspect 573. I think 578 might even be there. I doubt 584, so we'll see what he goes to, but I would suspect 73 or 78.
Stephen Leone there with his third attempt at 152.5 kilos.
But Dennis does not appear to be that far off of a 600-pound bench. It doesn't appear like it would be there today, but a 600-pound raw bench is something that I'm sure he's looking at in his future. We had discussed it earlier, Brian, but it really is a big sign of how great this meet is to have someone of Dennis's caliber here. Some of the lifters you're going to get to see throughout the weekend are national and international, but Dennis clearly is the best of the best. And he's building a resume and a career that is, in our sport, Hall of Fame-like, that he will go down as one of the greatest heavyweight lifters, 275, 264, and he's a light super heavyweight, really, that's ever competed in the history of powerlifting, along the lines of a Kurt Kowalski type career if Dennis continues on this path.
Platform number 3 is where we are. The third attempt for what looks to be Logan Barrett, and looks like that's not going to happen. So it looks like over on platform number 2, we've reached a bit of a pause. Matt Sommer on platform number 3 making his third attempt, 157.5 kilos.
Now for Matt, this is a big deal because 347, as we said earlier, well, we're showing 2, but Matt is on 3, so I'll give you directions on both. But that's not the correct name. We have Ming Win down as 2. I'm sure that wasn't Ming. Matt did miss his lift on platform 3. I think our score sheet's not updating on platform 2 because Ming Win's been the lifter for quite a while now.
And we've seen a few lifts off of platform number 2, but what we can do is take it over to platform number 3, where Keith Osayande will be lifting here in just a moment. And they're making some changes over at what looks to be platform number 2. This Osayande will come on platform number 3.
Hey, we've got exciting news on platform 2. The bench pressers hate when I do this, Brian, but our long national nightmare is over, and we are finally done bench pressing. We get to head back to the powerlifting part of the competition, also known as the deadlift. If you're a powerlifter, you get that joke. We like to tease the bench press only lifters. They're not actually powerlifters until they squat and deadlift.
Osayande with his third attempt at 358.25 pounds. So we'll be engaging the deadlift here in just a little bit on platform number 2, and from the way this goes, there will be probably a little bit of focus on platform number 2 as it relates to the fans, as they'll get an eye on the deadlift while some of our bench presses on platform number 3 will transpire. So it looks like on platform 3, Chris Costley will get an opportunity at 170 kilos. This will be his third offering on the bench today.
Now, I'm familiar with Chris. My training partner, Earl Hill, I've coached a couple times against Chris. Chris is a up-and-coming Georgia lifter, very good deadlifter. So this is a pretty good-sized bench for Chris, 374. Whoa, Chris's bench is up too. I would say he had more left in him. Now, the judges turned that down 2-1, and I apologize to Chris and his coaches. I cannot tell from this distance. The lift appeared easy. It's possible he beat the press command or one of the verbal commands. I cannot tell you. We can't even see what the cards. They don't have cards up this time, Brian. There's usually a card system to tell you what the red flag was for. So
it looks like Nicholas Arce will be on the bench for his third attempt at 172.5 kilos.
Yeah, these are some really top benching going on. I mean, we're still got several benchers left, and we're almost at 400 pounds. And a 400-pound raw bench is big no matter where you are. And a good finish for Nicholas.
So it's a good effort there, as you see Gino off in the background congratulating Arce with the lift there.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, the single best announcer in all of powerlifting, maybe the best announcer that's ever announced the powerlifting competition. That is up for debate. There have been some great ones all time, But, yeah, Gino is in a category for himself. I've done what he does, and I couldn't do what he does, and it is hard. I'm much happier being on the live stream broadcast. It's a lot easier on your voice and your body. Have you had a chance to you've probably never done the in-house announcing, Brian, for a powerlifting
I've never
meet?
done the in-house announcing for powerlifting, but I have done it for numerous other sports. And believe me, as I get more and more around the scene here, Gino definitely takes it to a different level of hype than any of the other announcers in-house in the world of powerlifting.
He's quite the character. Now, this is a big bench. Jeffrey Bigham has 385. It's another local lifter. Now, there's something interesting there. If you guys watching at home, that pause seemed like a long pause, but what it was here, Brian, was he sunk the bar in his chest. And the rule, as you said earlier, is the bar has to become motionless. So the bar was physically touching his chest for a long period of time, but he wasn't getting the signal because the bar was continuing to descend while it was on his chest. And so sometimes lifters at home or friends or family will say, oh, he got a long pause, he got ripped off. But in reality, the rules are you've got to stop that bar. So it actually benefits you to stop it quicker because you get a quicker press signal.
Now, once you get, for those that might be tuning in that are very new to the sport, Dr. Anderson, once you get the command from the judge to begin the upward ascent on the lift, is there a time frame or a time limit that they offer you before you actually engage? Like, can you pause a half a second after getting the command to continue the lift on the upward ascent?
Yeah, absolutely. There is no rule against holding it there. Obviously, you wouldn't want to because of the wasted energy, but there might be times balance-wise, especially in a bench shirt, where if the bar's a little out of the groove that you're almost having to wait for it to settle. Now, you could, if you stayed there too long, the judge might say take it, and the spotters might just grab the bar, figuring that you're not moving. And so that can happen. That would be very rare because usually it's obvious if a lifter says take it or if they shake their head that they're not lifting it. But again, you might see that in a shirted. I've seen that in shirted lifts. I've done that myself where the bar was in such a position that I almost wasn't ready to press when the judge said press, and I had to wait a split second to kind of get my groove back. But in general, I can tell you, Brian, as someone who's been underneath that bar, you're looking to get that thing up as soon as possible. You'd have no desire to stay there if you could help it.
Well, and that is why I would imagine you're going to see considerably more false starts going too early as opposed to someone taking their time, if you will, and sitting it on their chest for any length of time.
Well, and if you can really time it right, what you want to do is as soon as the P comes out, you want to start the movement. Whereas you'll see some lifters that wait until they hear the entire press and then they press. And that sounds like it's trivial, but it's no different than an Olympic sprinter, Usain Bolt, getting off a fraction of a second quicker than the guy next to him.
Well, in their world, 10.65 is considerably different than 10.68.
Exactly. Well, and for our sport, the quicker that you can get started, the faster you get that bar moving, the better you're going to be able to lift. So there is a component of being able to time the press signal.
Stephen Jiang over on platform number 3, a third attempt, this one at 182.5 kilos. Just a hair over 400 pounds.
Yeah, 402 is a big barrier in our sport. A lot of lifters you'll see. 182.5 sounds like an odd number, but it's because it's 402. A lot of lifters, same with 227.5, Brian, is 501, a very common number for lifters to attempt in the U.S. because we focus on the barriers that end in pounds, whereas internationally a 200-kilo bench press is a bigger deal.
Jiang not able to lift that amount. We'll see if DeCarlo Miles can, as he's trying the same exact number.
Very, very close miss for DeCarlo at 402.
Looked like his left side started trembling just a little bit, and had he been able to overcome that one, he might have gotten the 2 white lights to get him a good lift there. As it stands, not a good lift, and we'll move on to Tracy Curry who's going to up the ante a little bit. Tracy Curry, according to the numbers we have here, going to attempt 195 kilos, which translates to just a hair, literally a hair under 430 pounds.
Yeah, 429-pound bench press raw is enormous. I mean, you could go and take professional football teams, big-time college, UGA, Bama, Florida, big-time college programs, and you would not find very many 430-pound raw benchers. I mean, this is a big-time bench press, and we've still got 2 or 3 benches coming after him. Another closed grip bench here, which means it'll come off the chest fast, but his trouble part will be locking it out. Now that one appeared the bar came back down completely. Let's see what the judges say. It was no lift, 2-1. That was the difference, Brian, where the entire bar went down instead of just one side.
Just that little hitch made the difference. There's no question that he was able to get it to a locking position, but that hair of hesitation there was costly for him, as that effort at 429.9 pounds goes by the boards. And now Dennis Cornelius. Talk about the high rent district.
Well, and I must be in his coach Sherman Ledford's brain today, because I had predicted his second attempt bench and I was off by 5. This time we hit it right on the head. I was suspecting he'd go 573. I actually think if he hits this in his groove, he'll have more in him. I think he's probably in the range for 78 today. But Dennis is a technician on the bench, so it's really going to come down to an interesting component of this is his liftoff, Brian. When you're dealing with such a big bench, you need a precision liftoff. Fortunately, he's got Dale McLaren, who has competed both in the World Championships in the Masters division, raw and equipped. He's a world champion in the raw division. And Dale will be handing him 573 pounds, Brian.
And folks in the crowd have their phones out as they want to see this.
Yeah, this is truly world-class benching. There are only a select few people walking the planet who can do what you're about to see right now. And what I said earlier about pro sports teams, there's entire NFL teams that don't have anyone who can do this, and majority of college players who wouldn't be able to do this. And see, Sherman knew more than I did. It was just a hair much. 67 probably would have gone. It was interesting because Dennis seemed like he wasn't as explosive as I was expecting on his opener. He seemed a little more explosive on his second, and then that lift seemed like he did not get the same power off the chest. So I'll have to be able to watch the video later to see, and Dennis would know best whether it was a groove issue. It could just be a situation where that's where his bench strength is at right now.
While we've got a moment, we'll thank one of our sponsors here this evening at the 2018 5-Bar Showdown. Elite Iron Sports Performance in Buford, Georgia, is a part of our broadcast today here at the 5-Bar Showdown. Elite Iron Sports Performance located at 4296 Old Sewanee Road in Buford. You can reach out to them by calling 770-714-5957. That's 770-714-5957. A special thanks to Elite Iron Sports Performance for their support of this year's 5-Bar Showdown. As it looks like that we're going to turn our attention now to the deadlift over on platform number 2, as platform number 3 has seen the squats, I should say the bench press, come to a close.
Yeah, our bench is officially done for the morning. Unfortunately, we will have to go back to the bench this afternoon. It's a necessary evil.
And intriguingly enough, the music gets just a little louder, and it seems that Gino gets a little more animated as he knows what's at stake here, as well as the folks here inside the arena.
Well, what you run into in the deadlift, Brian, is a couple of factors coming together to create the intensity. First of all, as we talked about earlier, the deadlift refers to the fact that the weight is coming from a dead stop. So there's a little bit more of you need to create the fire to get it going. So a lot of lifters prefer more intensity coming deadlift. Additionally, you have the fact that this is where the totals come together and lifters know exactly what they need to win or advance to a certain placing. Also, the squat and the bench press tend to have more technique components to them. For me personally, I had to use technique to a premium on all lifts, but the deadlift tends to be a lot of lifters are more aggressive, and it's a lot just you got to get fired up and pull.
So we're watching the action over on platform number 2. It's over on platform number 2. They continue on. We're setting things up over for platform number 3 to begin here in just a moment with the deadlift. And let's be honest, I don't get to access behind the curtain, but I would imagine that there's a little bit of chatter, a little bit of rivalry amongst the guys back behind the curtain. Maybe even a little bit of trash talk, if you will, about who's going to lift what in the deadlift during the course of that final discipline of the day.
Well, yeah, and by now what you're also seeing is we can see through the kind of opening between the screen a whole bunch of people with notepads, jotting stuff down, writing stuff down, and what it is they're figuring out the math, because you need to know exactly what your lifter needs, what number is going to be the weight that he needs to be able to move up in the placings and eventually go for the win. And in some cases, a pretty good amount of Josh Rohr's money.
Yes.
Josh is giving away thousands of dollars this weekend. And in powerlifting, that might as well be millions because there's not a lot of money involved.
Oftentimes a labor of love at events like this. Well, still no less a labor of love, but anytime there's a cash prize involved, amps up the enthusiasm just a smudge.
Well, yeah, and last year for the Superman women and Superman powerlifting, the men and women combined, 5-bar combined, it was $1,500 to the winner. That's a significant amount in the sport of powerlifting. And we're going to have coming up in the deadlift, not on this platform, but on platform 3, Dennis Cornelius and Matt Sumner both will be over 700 pounds in the deadlift. So we're going to see some huge pulls shortly.
That first effort there on platform number 2 by Arnold Ramos at 190 kilos. Gets 3 white lights, as we're able to see just on the very top edge of the screen there, whether or not we see a good lift or not. And usually with the deadlift, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, definitely the deadlift is the one that has less subtleties within the rules. In general, the biggest rule infraction you'll see is if the lifter does what's called hitching, which is the bar dragging up your legs in such a way where it goes up and down, a hitching motion. Also, you do have to be locked out at the top where your knees, your hips, and your shoulders are completely locked before the down signal.
Simon Santoso at 197.5. He gets 3 white lights. So he's got a qualifying score here in the deadlift. And next up we'll have Zachary Conley. And one of the things about this also is the intensity, the anticipation, if you will, certainly gets amped up a little bit. But just the speeds of the lift, as they can certainly run them out pretty quickly.
And watch Zach, if you're looking at home, that's an overhand grip. That's both hands facing forward into his body. That's typically not as common. Most lifters use an alternating grip to hold onto the bar. The benefit to that, if he can hold on to it, is it's a more natural position. Your muscles are pulling more evenly. It's actually a lot better for your spine. So we'll be interested to see how he does. His opener looked very easy.
It's interesting that you mentioned the spine. We'll have Josh Holt come up here in just a moment and offer up his first deadlift at 200 kilos. But we'll take care of one of our sponsors here for this afternoon's segment as we engage in day 1 of the 2018 5-bar Showdown. It's platform number 2, Josh Holt.
Very easy opener.
He gets 3 white lights, so he's good. So I want to thank Active Care Atlanta Chiropractic. They're happy to be a partner with the 5-bar Showdown this year. Located in Johns Creek, Active Care Atlanta can be found on Twitter and Facebook, but you can also find them at activecareatlanta.com or simply give them a call at 770-559-4236. That's 770-559-4236. Again, special thanks to Active Care Atlanta Chiropractic for their support of the 5-bar Showdown. Rhett King at 200 kilos.
Remember we discussed positioning. Look how narrow his stance is there, Brian.
A narrow stance rocking Chuck Taylors, which is something that surprisingly, as I got more and more into announcing powerlifting, was not aware that amongst all of the technical equipment that you see here, you see some guys just wearing a pair of canvas Chuck Taylors to do some of their lifts.
Well, and the premise behind that, there's actually a reason. It's not just fashion, although some people it might be. It's because the Chuck Taylors have a very small heel. It's a flat sole. And so a lot of traditional tennis shoes you would buy, which is what most of us started off in powerlifting wearing, have a higher heel. Well, in the deadlift, you want to be as low to the ground as possible because the higher up you are, the farther you've got to reach down to get the bar. So in the deadlift, it's very common to use, some people will use what's called deadlift slippers with no sole or a very flat shoe. In the squat, you don't see it as common because it's not as stable on your ankles, you know, the nature of those shoes. But you do see those, but it's very common in the deadlift.
Mark Reed on platform number 2 for a lift.
Another conventional, narrow grip, narrow stance.
He is not able to land that initial deadlift.
Now we're going to actually be able to keep track of the placings. This lifter coming up, Peter Wynn, is looking to stay in 6th place. So if you're a Peter Wynn fan at home, this 352-pound deadlift will keep him in 6th place with a chance to move up into the top 5 on his 3rd attempt.
And if he's able to establish this score, it does keep him just outside of the 5th position, but then you can begin to shape your 2nd and 3rd lifts. Again, talking about what you were saying, giving yourself the opportunity to sneak back into the conversation of a top 5.
And another strategy that comes in for the people at home who aren't familiar with powerlifting is you are allowed to make 2 changes on your 3rd attempt deadlift. The other attempts throughout the competition, once you put your attempt in, you cannot change them. But in the deadlift, you can change your 3rd attempt twice, and that's just a strategy situation. If I'm trying to beat you and you move up 5 pounds ahead of me, I go and change mine to 5 pounds ahead of you. And the strategy comes in is you only have 2 changes. So whoever changes their change last is the one who has the advantage. And it benefits you to be a stronger deadlifter because you're pulling after the weaker deadlifter.
And we're about to go into rapid fire fashion now as it looks like platform 3 is about ready to go. And I would imagine with that second, with 2 opportunities to make a weight change, you could almost use one of them as sort of a bluff to sort of take somebody off of your mindset about what you're trying to do with future lifts in that segment.
Now you're talking the way I think. I'm a big believer on messing with your competition when you have the opportunity come deadlift. Now the bottom line, Brian, is you need to be the better deadlifter because it is extremely difficult to coach a lifter who has the weaker deadlift because all the cards, it's, you know, playing poker or blackjack, all the cards are in the house's favor, and it's really to your advantage if you have the better pull because you can see what the other guy pulls and then go after him.
Harrison Hayes starting out on platform number 3 with his initial lift at 152.5 kilos. And it looks like 3 white lights as you barely have just the tail end of the lights showing up on the board. Turner Carlisle with his second opportunity at 172.5. He gets 3 white lights, so he's got a second qualifying score. And on platform number 2, stepping up will be Harris Sumro here in just a moment for his second opportunity.
How much of a hassle would it be to bring this camera up an inch or 2 so we can see the light?
Christopher Quatch over on platform number 3 about to step up here in just a moment as you see Gino in front of the screen. Or as you will see Gino in front of the screen here in just a moment. So we'll stay on platform number 2 as Harris Sumro will get his second lift, of course going with the narrow stance. 175 kilos. He'll move to 7th place if he lands it.
Very easy
and he
lift.
does land it. Seems like he's got plenty in the tank.
And again, that's where his advantage will come in, Brian, is because he had more left in him, he's essentially got more to mess with or more to play with for his competition. So when you're coaching a lifter and he's not as good of a deadlifter, you're almost helpless. It's a terrible feeling. I always tell lifters, if anyone's out there at home watching, it was my worst lift, and if there's one lift I'd recommend you get good at, it's the deadlift. It just gives you all the power.
Well, and you feel like that if there is a deficit that you're trying to come from behind on, you can really scale it if you're really good in the deadlift. Cody Dotson, I should say, at 182.5. We'll see what the judges say. 2 out of 3 white lights there, so the lift will count. So he's on the board at 182.5.
Yeah, if we've got football fans watching at home, it's very much akin to, in football, you don't want to give Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers the ball with 1 minute, 2 minutes to play where they're trailing you. Like, you just don't want them to have the ball in their hands because you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. It's the same in powerlifting. You don't want Brad Gillingham or a world-class deadlifter coming after you when you're trying to hold them off come deadlift time.
John Saunders, you saw, connecting on platform number 3. Now Caleb Moore at 195 gets 3 white lights over on platform number 2.
And that moved him into second place. So that's a really significant lift because he might have a shot to go for the win on his third.
Arnold Ramos will be coming up on platform number 2 in just a moment. Right now we'll go to Christopher Edmond. As Edmond sets his belt, his first lift is at 207.5 kilos.
I believe we are getting our cameras reworked. The masterful Dr. Trey Cunningham is fixing it so we can actually see the lights in the background. So we're going to be able to enhance our broadcast, Brian.
And Edmond's not going to be able to connect on that first lift. As we now go to Arnold Ramos. A successful lift here at 197.5, and he stays in first place.
And he's in the junior division also, so this is a young man that's very strong. Junior means 23 and under, Brian.
And drilled it. 3 white lights. He is in, as he goes to first place, or stays in first place with that lift in his category. Is now over on platform number 3. We'll have Cody Sankiewicz at 215 for his opening salvo. And that looks simple enough. 3 white lights, and he's on the board at 215. Approaching number 2, we'll have Josh Holt at 210 kilos. Second attempt for Holt. He'll engage the lift. You see the bounding of the camera. As that lift counted for Holt. Justin Hurley on his offering gets 3 white lights, so he's connected at 217.5 over on platform number 3. As the action's going to be fast and furious the rest of the way here. And segment 1, our opening segment of the 2018 5-bar Showdown. The weightlifting side on the other channel has come to a close for this morning's session. We now go into our powerlifting, so we wrap up the deadlift.
Yeah, another selling point if you want to become a weightlifter is you only have to do 6 attempts. We have to do 9 in powerlifting. So,
Nick Cabero over on platform number 3, an attempt at 225 kilos. And it looked like Mr. Cabero has plenty left in the tank. So he gets 3 white lights there, and he sort of manhandled that attempt.
Brian, do you think I can make the argument that the weightlifters should only get 2/3 of the prize money as the powerlifters since they only do 2/3 of the lifts? I'll admit that's a biased opinion since I'm a powerlifter.
I'm sure there's a counter argument being waged right now somewhere on social media.
Well, see, I would suspect if I was a weightlifter, my argument would be our sport is so challenging we can only do 6 attempts, and your sport's so easy that you guys can do 9. So I'm sure there's a back and forth on both sides. Easy opener there.
It's Michael Wall, 227.5, 3 white lights there.
Yeah, that was a very easy 501.
Over on platform number 2, Zachary Conley, deadlift number 2 at 212.5. Again, talking about the grip that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, this young man's a teenager pulling overhand 468. And you'll notice what he does is a hook grip where you lock your thumb underneath. Very strong lockout.
James Rohr over on platform number 3, 235 kilos. Very solid.
Yes, very strong. He looks strong, too.
3 white lights there. He certainly looked the part as he hammered that lift. So we'll have Mark Reed approach here in just a moment. He missed on his first lift. Carlton Beasley will engage here on platform number 3, and it looks like Beasley will get the call on platform number 3. You see him there. Carlton Beasley, 252.5 will be his opener in the deadlift segment.
Talk about a guy who looks strong. This is a guy who looks like he's got some muscles. Let's see. Yeah, he's as strong as he looks.
Of course, 3 white lights. So Beasley on the board at 252.5.
I would suspect he's going to be in the neighborhood of a 600-pound pull before the day's over. I'm not convinced he has 600 in him, but I will not be surprised if he jumps to about 584 on his second attempt.
Mark Reed still awaiting the call to approach as they're cleaning up the bar. So we talked about some of that chalk that was accumulating on the bar. So they're going to try to see if they can start with a cleaner slate over on number 2.
Well, and an additional factor in the deadlift, Brian, is that lifters put baby powder on their legs because where you want grip on your hands, you want it to slide easily on your legs. So the spotter loaders will also wipe the bar down because, as you can imagine, baby powder where you had it on one lift might be where another lifter is gripping the bar, and they don't want to feel the baby powder or the bar will slip out of their hands. So the rules actually require on the third attempt that the bar is cleaned before every lift. The spotter loaders at the chief referee's discretion clean the bar during the first and second attempts.
Harrison Hayes will make his second attempt at 170. He's already qualified, and he cannot get the second lift to go. And it looked like from that circumstance that Hayes was in trouble from the beginning, almost like he didn't initiate a solid enough grip from the onset.
Well, and I noticed his second attempt was uneven as well. So again, going back to me looking at it as a doctor, there could be a muscular issue where he's got an imbalance or an injury, or it could simply be technique. But there's clearly a problem where he needs to be careful, because if you continue to pull max weights where you're that uneven, you're going to put yourself at greater risk for injury.
Peter Nguyen with the lift over on number 2. Christopher Quach awaiting the signal over on number 3 to attempt the lift. Jared Davis will be approaching number 2, so we'll stay with platform 3 here. An attempt of 192.5.
That's another overhand grip there. We're seeing more of those, and his grip looked like it was coming open.
3 white lights there. Sequatch has connected at 192.5. For Jared Davis now, 177.5.
Now Jared has a long way to pull.
And cannot do it. So Davis will get 3 reds on his second attempt, or I should say his third attempt. Jonathan Ward on platform 3 will make a second attempt, this one at 205.
The bar got a little bit in front of them before he pulled, so it made it a little more challenging, but if he can correct that on his third, he's got a lot left in him.
That's 205 is on the board for Ward.
That's a common mistake you'll see, Brian, is that lifters that are starting the pull, the bar moves out in front of them, and it just simple physics. It makes it harder the farther the bar is in front of you. So you really want to keep it as close to your body as possible, especially as it's coming up.
But from what I understand, it elongates the lift and forces more energy to be expended.
Well, and to start the pull, you do have some cases, especially a bigger lifter. I had to do this myself. You want to back away from the bar, because when you're really large and bend down to get the bar, you'll push it in front of you. So there is a leverage factor to start where the bar's a little bit in front of you. but you don't want it going in front of you farther as you're pulling. You actually want to be pulling it back in to your body.
Dotson not able to connect on that lift on number 2 as John Saunders will approach the bar for his second attempt, 207.5.
Very strong lockout.
Yes, sir. 3 white lights. Turner Carlisle, his third attempt at 185. He'll complete that lift. 3 white lights. So Carlisle happy to finish at 185.
Yeah, he's just a junior lifter. That was a really good finish. 400-pound deadlift by a junior lifter.
And this could be, in a very young career already, arguably one of the bigger events that he's been engaged in.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say the majority of the lifters in this competition, this would be their biggest meet. Now, Dennis Cornelius has competed in the World Championships. Matt Sumner has competed nationally. Like, there's some big-name lifters, but a lot of these lifters, yeah, this would be the biggest competition they've ever done.
Cody Sankiewicz, 222.5. He gets 3 white lights over on platform number 3. Harris Sumro at number 2 at 190, his third attempt. And he gets 3 white lights there, so he's able to end the day on a winning note. So he gets 3 white lights at 190.
Yeah, when I'm announcing the in-house, I always make a point to let the crowd know if you can go 3 for 3 in the deadlift, that just makes your day. Not only is it the hardest lift to go 3 for 3, it's the end of the day, and it sends you home on a good note. Every powerlifter has had bad squat and bench, but when you hit 3 deadlifts, it just makes it feel like the day was better. And in converse, and I've done this unfortunately a lot, when you go 8 for 8 and miss your last deadlift, you feel like you had a bad day. And I know that's not really, necessarily rational, but powerlifting by its nature is not really rational.
Oh, 3 for 3 in the deadlift. That's like getting a birdie on number 18.
Yeah, exactly. That would be the best way to compare. You've had a bad round, but you hit the birdie on the 18th, and it sends you into the next round, whereas if you have a great round and you bogey the 18th, you feel terrible.
Dr. Anderson, not to be Debbie Downer, I've never gotten a birdie on 18, so I'm still waiting on that.
Hey, well, if you're golf the way I golf, a bogey on 18 would be great. So
I'm not that far off from you.
Yeah, I start with bogeys. That's more of a birdie for a regular person is probably a double for me.
Nick Cabero, his second attempt at 240 kilos.
Now here's where leverage comes in. Wait till you see this lifter here. You can see this is a deadlift body, but that would be a disadvantage in the bench press just by his long arms.
But impressive nonetheless.
Very good.
3 white lights there.
And a good pull. I mean, you're talking on that lift there. It was 529
Well,
pounds.
and it looked like he was doing it for practice.
Yeah, I would say upper fives, probably. I don't know if 600 will be there, but I would say 578, maybe 584.
We'll go over to number 2, Arnold Ramos. If he's successful, he'll move back into first place as the toggling at the top of the table continues.
Yeah, and this
his
is
third attempt at 205.
Yeah, this is his third attempt. So this, if you're watching at home and you're a Ramos fan, you need to be yelling and screaming in your living room. And 3 whites.
And he nailed it and just walked away.
Michael Wall over on 2 was also successful at 534.
We're ending with a flurry, and make no mistake about it, this is good stuff. So we see a lot of guys that looks like they're going to go home happy.
Well, and as we've discussed, every lift at this point means something to someone. You're either moving up for placings, you're going for personal records, you're trying to get a personal total. At this point in time, there's not a lift that's being done on the third attempt that doesn't have significance.
James Rowe on platform number 3 at an attempt at 247.5.
Look at the size of his legs.
Not a small man.
Yeah, you can tell James Rowe has spent time in the weight room. And a very strong lockout. Judges say 3 whites.
3 white lights. Will go quickly to Josh Holt. His third attempt at 220.
I would go so far as to say, Brian, he actually left a little bit that he had more. A lot of times you're looking to hit the maximum. I think he might have had another 5 kilos.
Well, and as I recall, I think he was the lifter that got off to the slow start with the grip and so therefore was not able to complete his second, so he finished there with the 220, and that might have been the undoing there.
Well, and that makes sense because it looked like he had more left in him, and it could have been because he had trouble on the second, he didn't get to go all out on his third. That's a thing a lot of people at home or people who aren't powerlifters don't realize. It's not like in the gym where you can just pick the weight you want to do. If you miss your second, you have to pull your third attempt down, and it throws off what you might have had the strength to lift a certain amount, but you never even got a chance to try it.
Surrett King on platform number 2. 3 white lights at 220 kilos. Well, and Dr. Anderson, to give you some sort of comparison, it'd be like having second down and 3. You're going to run a play there anticipating getting a first down. All of a sudden you lose 2, so now you're 3rd and 5, possibly in a passing situation. So that's part of the strategy there.
And this is the lifter earlier. I thought he might have 600 in him. He's jumping all the way, Carlton Beasley, to 589. Now this is a big jump.
Beasley.
The interesting thing is it looked like a hitch at the top. What did the judges say?
Yeah, 3 red lights, they caught it.
That's that hitch we talked about. He's very powerful. He's got 600 in him strength-wise, but it's more of a technique issue. At the top, he's almost rushing the lockout, and he needs to just actually kind of slow down and let it lock out. He's got plenty of strength.
Simon Santoso.
5:01.
And doesn't look like he's going to be able to make it. Oh.
Appears like it could be a cramp issue.
Well, and you talked about that earlier in the broadcast, that you get into this segment for younger lifters specifically, if you're not fully hydrated, you could run into circumstances similar to what we may have seen there.
Yeah, I'm trying to hydrate, and all I'm doing is announcing, and I want to make sure I don't cramp up. So.
Oh, just at the end of bench press, I could kind of feel my calf muscle giving way. I really had to double up on the water.
Yeah, you know that you're starting to age when you worry about cramping up or injuring yourself announcing.
Indeed. Harrison Hayes, out of platform number 3, cannot complete at 170. So Hayes' day comes to a close. Zachary Conley.
We're going to get you over to Zachary in just a second for his third attempt. There we go.
Connolly not going to be able to get it off the floor.
Unfortunately, wasn't able to budge, and that's something you'll see, Brian, on the sumo deadlift. Sumo is really more of a technical lift where you're using leverages because your stance is wider, you're shortening the distance, but the hardest part is getting the bar off the ground. So you'll see occasionally a lift like that where it almost looks like, how's that possible? He didn't even get it started. But if he could have gotten it an inch off the ground, he very likely would have locked it out.
So we're here on day 1 of the 2018 5-bar Showdown, along with the Dr. Patrick Anderson. Brian Rushing here with you, as it's been an exciting day already, and with a day and a half left essentially still to go in the competition, Dr. Anderson, this looks like it's going to be a phenomenal event just in its second year.
Yeah, and we've seen some amazing lifts so far already. 892-pound squat by Dennis Cornelius. He gave a very good run to a 573 bench. And all I can tell by looking at that and seeing those two announcers is what Josh Rohr told me when he was getting together this broadcast with Dr. Trey Cunningham was he was looking for the best-looking announcer in powerlifting and the strongest announcer in powerlifting to do the broadcast. So my question for you, Brian, is how strong are you?
Well, you're better looking. I'll put it like that, okay?
Well, that's what I was trying to get at is I'm told that they got the strongest and the best looking, so you must have a really impressive resume over there.
I do okay in announcing. Powerlifting, not so much.
Well, see, you could have fooled everybody.
I don't know. There's enough people around this table right now that know I'm not fooling anybody. As we're wrapping up on platforms 2 and 3 at this point, our deadlift segment, the weightlifting side, the afternoon session has already gotten started. As we are just flying along here, platform number 3, you see Jonathan Ward at 215 kilos, and he nails it, and he's excited. We'll quickly go over to Min Nguyen.
Another overhand grip lifter. I believe this is the third one we've seen. Very, very strong for Minh Nguyen.
Well, Nguyen with 3 white lights there on his first attempt. 202.5 kilos. John Saunders, who has impressed me this afternoon, making his 3rd deadlift attempt. He's not able to get that one off the ground again. As you mentioned, that wider stance. Once you can get the engine going and building the momentum, the lift gets seemingly easier. It's getting the lift started that seems to be the greater difficulty there with that wider stance.
And I would compare it to the bench press when we talked about earlier that the narrow benchers tend to get the bar moving quicker and trouble at lockout. Same with the deadlift. The wide benchers have more trouble getting it off their chest, but once they can get it moving, they tend to be able to lock it out, and it's just a matter of leverages.
Over on platform number 2.
This is a teen lifter looking to pull 501. It's a big deadlift for a teenager, Brian. Christopher Edmond.
So we'll see Edmond here in a moment as that lift is not completed. We'll take it immediately over to number 3 where Christopher Edmond making his 3rd attempt, 227.5.
And he has got a long way to pull this bar.
And can't do it.
Unfortunately, we've seen that a few times, but that's not that uncommon in the sumo that the bar doesn't even leave the ground. It can drive you crazy when you're trying to coach a lifter because they might make one lift, Brian, and jump 10 pounds and the bar doesn't even leave the ground. You think, how am I supposed to pick an attempt off of that?
On platform number 3, we'll have Cody Sienkowitz making his 3rd attempt, 232.5 kilos.
So 512, and this is to hold on to 5th place.
We'll see what the judges think. 2 red lights.
2-1 decision. Let's see on 2, that was Manuel Parachavez.
We didn't get to see Parachavez on camera at 227.5. He got 3 white lights, so he's connected now with his first lift. Justin Hurley will be coming up here in a moment on platform number 3. Got one more hello I want to offer out to New Care Physical Therapy, your go-to in the metro Atlanta area for physical therapy, dry needling, rehabilitation, and functional movement screen. Located in Norcross, Georgia, you can set your appointment by calling New Care Physical Therapy at 678-718-5240, or you can go online to www.newcarept.com. That's newcarept.com. New Care Physical Therapy, a proud sponsor of this weekend's 5-bar Showdown. It's over on platform number 3, Justin Hurley, 237.5. He nailed it, was happy about it as he'll connect on his 3rd lift. So he'll take a score of 237.5 with it. Here along with the Dr. Patrick Anderson, this is Brian Rushing here with you. So glad that you could join us. An event founded by Josh Rohr and Caleb Williams in its 2nd year here, and it's certainly taken on more sponsors, more fans. There's more excitement all around. A good 2nd year event, and this is just day 1. Can't wait to see what the final day looks like tomorrow, which we will bring here to you on YouTube.
Well, and the thing that we saw last year when this really gets exciting is the Superman and Superwoman when you're combining. So the lifters who lifted this morning in the weightlifting that will then come back and do the powerlifting this afternoon in the men's, and being able to do the combination where you can we'll be able to keep score and tell you, where their total's putting them on the overall.
So looking over on platform number 2. We'll have Jackie Chang coming up in just a moment. 235 will be his opening salvo. We'll flip it over quickly to Michael Wall, his 3rd attempt, 255 kilos.
This is to move into 1st place. So if you're a Michael Wall fan at home, this lift right here is to move him into 1st at 562.
And he can't do it. Chang now
Another overhand grip here, Brian.
Chang, 3 white lights. He's on the board at 235. And James Rohr, another one that we've been impressed with this afternoon, will get an opportunity to go to 260 with his third attempt.
Yeah, James Rohr appears like a guy that does not miss leg day very often.
Well, he's competing in the men's Raw Pro Heavyweight, the Raw Junior, and the Raw Overall.
And this is to hold on to third place. So this is a significant pull here, 573.
Wow.
I believe that's a good lift.
He gets 3 white lights, so he connects at 260.
And the lift for Christian Parker looks good too. That was just an opener, but that was 529 pounds. No, it was 2
red lights.
Yeah, I apologize at home. It's far from us to see, so I could not tell you what that rule infraction was.
So we'll have Carlton Beasley.
This is the young man who came out and hit his second attempt, but remember there was a hitching. So what happened is he's going to explode off the floor here, Brian, and he's almost got to just be patient and not try and yank it to the top. If he just lets it lock out, he's got plenty of strength. Watch how fast it'll jump, and now right here's where he has trouble. Now that one's going to be a little closer. He might have gotten that one. There was just a slight hitch on that one. Let's see what the judges say. Nope, still got 3 reds.
They didn't like it, so he does not connect at 267.5. So we'll have Micah Nibbs.
How about this? This is a 551 opener, Brian. A 551-pound opener in the deadlift.
What a way to say hello to the crowd, and he can't connect on it.
Now that was unusual because deadlifts you don't usually see missed on the opener, and it appeared like it was moving fine, and he almost quit on it like he felt something. Maybe it got out of the groove. I suspect he'll be able to hit that and more, but we'll have to keep an eye out to see, because it'd be a shame to get your deadlift bombed out and not be able to get a total in the competition.
And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is when it comes to each individual discipline, how hard is it on you the rest of the three lifts when you miss on your opener?
Well, it's actually interesting, more, in my opinion, more challenging mentally than anything else, because you're expecting your opener to be easy. And now that's going to be no lift because of balance. And one of the most challenging things in our sport, Brian, is a comeback attempt. And so if you miss your opener, you have a comeback attempt. And then if you want to talk about pure fear, if you miss your first 2 attempts and you have to make a do or die lift on your third. Fortunately, I was able to avoid that in 30 years of powerlifting. I never had to face going up against the lift to stay in the competition, but I've seen it, and it is not a fun experience. I feel for lifters when they go through it.
Robert Colin Blennis with his first lift gets 3 white lights at 225. Now we'll take it over to number 2, or I should say number 3. This is Robert Colin Blennis, who'll be making an attempt at 225.
So 496 opener, just under 500 pounds.
Wow.
Just a strong, steady opener. I wouldn't say it was smoked, but he definitely looks like he's got more left in him.
So he's on the board. It's over on platform number 2, James Miller. We'll get things started at 260 with his first opportunity.
And this young man can pull.
Wow. Easy. Another walk in the park, it looked like.
Overhand also. Yeah, he'll pull over 600 today.
Wowzers. Chris Costley get his first offering, 227.5. Did you see them creeping their toes up to the edge of the inside of the plates?
The thought there, Brian, is the wider you are, the shorter the distance, but you also run into, you don't want to set that bar down on your feet, and I've seen that happen before, and that is not fun. Now that was an issue where he almost went up so fast he lost his balance.
Jordan Frazier on number 2, 262.5. We'll wait on the scoring. He's 3 white lights. He's on the board. I fouled baseballs off of my ankle and felt like I dropped a cinder block. but I've never dropped 600 pounds on my foot.
Unfortunately, years ago, I was deadlifting sumo in an old gym that was dusty, and it was only 435. It was just a workout weight, but my foot slid out from under me, and as I was setting the bar down, it went out, so there was no chance to stop it, and the weight came right across my foot. Amazingly enough, I didn't break a bone, but yeah, it was one of the most painful experiences of my life. You don't realize how many nerve endings there are in your foot until you drop 435 on it.
You find out fast.
Yeah, I don't recommend it.
No.
For years, and I'm not exaggerating, Brian, for years when I would deadlift, as I would go to set the bar down, I'd pull my feet in. Used to drive my brother, was my coach, crazy. He's like, just pull, but, you know, you're gun shy once you've been through that. Now look what we have here. This is 633 pounds opening attempt for Marcus Adodo. That is a big opener.
We'll see what they say about it.
That's 3 whites, I'm sure. Yeah, that's a good lift.
White lights there all across. 287.5 kilos. He's on the board. So we've got Andrew Hawkins on platform number 2 about to approach, as well as Nicholas Arce over on platform number 3.
So we're going back down on platform 2 to second attempts. And on platform 3, we got an opener at 578. Man, that is a big time opener.
So Arce will step up on platform 3. He'll set the bar to his liking.
And this young man's what we would call a tall drink of water. He has got a long way to pull that bar.
We'll see what they say. 3 white lights. Arce's on the board at 262.5. Andrew Hawkins at 180. 3 white lights. So he qualifies at 180 now on his second lift. So we've got coming up on platform number 2, Min Nguyen with his second attempt. He'll be attempting 220. Then we'll have Keith Oseande attempting number 1 at 275 kilos.
Yeah, and that 275 is a 606. That is a giant opening pull.
So Nguyen over on platform number 2. We'll see him first.
I believe
they're still queuing up.
I believe he was overhand, and he was pretty much obliterated his opener. So let's see. He is overhand. Very strong lift. I think that's going to be 3 whites, and it is.
3 white lights for Min Nguyen. So he's in at 220.
Whatever they're doing on platform 3, I know the weight's not loaded correctly because 606 is 5 big, beautiful red 25-kilo plates, and they got a blue on there. So if Keith Oseande is the lifter and 606 is the weight, they're not ready for him. It's one of the things when you're coaching someone, at least if you know what certain numbers are, you can make sure the weight's loaded correctly. 606 is all reds only.
And to touch on that all the more, if there is an improper weight loaded, the last thing that you want if you're a coach is for your athlete to engage a lift with the wrong weight on it, because that's just, again, more needless expended energy.
Absolutely. As a coach, I always make a point to check the weight. First, you want to make sure it's even, because that's a safety issue if it's misloaded uneven. But then, interestingly enough, if it's loaded heavy and you make the lift, you actually get credit for it. So there are some coaches who've been known to allow their lifter to go out, because if they make it, you get credit, but if it's loaded too heavy, you get another attempt with no penalty. It's a little risky behavior because you could end up having a lifter wear himself out. But in the deadlift, it's a lot psychological. So if you think you're pulling 500 and it's actually 523, you're liable to pull it because you don't realize it's 523.
Blake Mabry connected on his lift at 220, or on platform number 2. Logan Barrett on number 3 now, his opening salvo at 272.5.
That's 600. No problem. What do you think of that, Brian? Could you stand up that fast? That was 600 pounds.
Not with that much weight attached
No,
to
I
me.
mean just stand up. That
well,
was 600 pounds. I'm not sure I'd get out of this chair that quickly right now.
Manuel Para-Chavez will get his second opportunity, 237.5.
Very narrow stance here, Brian.
Para-Chavez.
Looked good to me. 3 whites.
3 white lights. He's on the board with his second completed lift at 237.5. This looks like now we will finally get to see Keith Oseande over on number 3. 3 white lights. He's on at 275. Christian Parker will come on. His second attempt will be at 240.
$529.
Christian Parker connects to Carlo Miles over on number 3. Parker goes 2 for 3 white lights. DeCarlo Miles over on number 3 did not get to see that. He got 3 white lights. So his second offering, or his first offering, I should say, was good.
Some big pulls coming up. We got Big Jeff Bigham, 617 on platform 3, Brian. 617 pound opener in the deadlift.
Over on platform number 2, we'll have Viet Fifan. Will make his second deadlift attempt. Jeffrey Bigham will open up, as you mentioned, 280 cool kilos.
Yeah. 617 pound opener in the deadlift. That means theoretically this young man should be looking to pull past 650 today. And I would not doubt that. I would say 300 kilos,
wow.
661 could be there today for him.
Should it look that easy?
Well, it's interesting because I think it should, because I think you should be using power at all times. But it almost fools you because you think, how could somebody lift 600 pounds that easy? But it's really a power situation. And some lifters just lift differently. Some lifters do a slow grind on every attempt, and they can still go up in weight. But in general, power is your friend. That's why it's called powerlifting, because you can use momentum to break through a sticking point.
Platform number 3. Tracy Curry, opening at 290. That's 639.
Oh, my gosh. Now, that was interesting because he might not have locked that out. Let's see what the judges say. They gave him 3 whites. It appeared like the left side. It's hard to tell from our angle because we're in the front. Like maybe he wasn't all the way locked out.
The judge is satisfied with it with 3 white lights.
Brian, we're almost at 700 pounds on this platform. We're almost at 700 pounds. Openers.
This is
national level lifting. Matt Traherne, 672 opener in the deadlift. You'd go entire competitions and not see somebody pull 672. He's opening with it. Another overhand.
And from this perspective with Matthew Traherne, that's where just looks are deceiving. I would never have imagined that young man there on his opening attempt would have been pulling that much, but he did.
Well, he's strong and strong looking, but you're right, a 672 deadlift opener. I mean, that means he's going to pull over 700. Yeah, he doesn't look like it because, in fact, you'll see in a minute, Dennis Cornelius is coming out with a 700-pound deadlift. And Cornelius, of course.
Platform number 2, Micah Nibbs at 250, cannot complete that lift.
So here we've got Dennis Cornelius. Now this looks like a 700-pound deadlifter. Look at the size of his legs. Everything about this man screams power. And remember, 892 squat, 562 bench, near miss at 573 earlier today. This should be no problem.
That's phenomenal. Wow, 3 white lights, 705.48 pounds, 320 kilos is his score now. As Kirill Scheinerman.
Well, and just doing some quick math, that already gave him about a 2160 total on his opener.
Scheinerman with his second attempt at 250 kilos. 2 white lights. So he's qualified at 250 now.
Now we're going to go to the biggest deadlift of the competition so far over on 3. Matt Sommer out of New York, 716 opener. This young man hit an 810 squat earlier today.
Over on platform number 3, Sommer.
And a very strong opener for Sommer. I would say 750 plus is going to be there today.
That's incredibly good. As you see now, Drew Thompson with his second attempt from that backside angle, as you're getting almost a view of behind the curtain, a view I don't ever get really. So you get to see Thompson here,
this
265.
Is to stay in second place, so this is an important lift.
3 white lights, so he moves, or I should say stays in second place with that connected lift. So glad that you've been with us throughout this morning, despite the weather delaying things just a hair. So glad to bring this action to you. Brian Rushing along with the Dr. Patrick Anderson for this opening segment here at day 1 of the 2018 5-bar Showdown. So we'll have Jordan Frazier coming on from platform number 2. 270 kilos on his second attempt. We'll try to go quickly to Chris Costley if we can. As Costley's lift, along with Frazier, both 3 white lights. Costley connected at 277.5 over on number 3. Miller, or I should say, the lift on platform number 2 connects at 270.
Yeah, you didn't get to see Chris Costley's, but it was a very strong second attempt at 611. And now this is James Miller, who we watched earlier, absolutely obliterate his opener, and he's the one that's going to pull overhand grip. And this is to move him into second place. James is a judge, so you'll see him at a lot of the meets judging in Georgia. And he is a deadlift extraordinaire. Wait till you see this pull, Brian. He just grips it and rips it, as they say.
Stephen Leone now on platform number 3.
That lift for James Miller also put him in second place.
So he connects at 280. 220 for Stephen Leone. It's the beauty of doing deadlift with 2 platforms running simultaneously. It really, I mean, it happens in rapid fire fashion. You get to see a lot of these guys put together very solid performances, and we're able to bring this action to you here on day 1 of the 2018 5-bar Showdown. Again, special thanks to Team Rohr Powerlifting and Williams Weightlifting USA, as they are essentially the brain trusts of this event. So Marcus Adodo cannot connect at 295, so he'll be a little bit dejected as he goes back to the drawing board to see what his third attempt will look like. Robert Colin Blennis will prepare for his second attempt on platform number 3. Andrew Hawkins will make his final lift of the afternoon at 185 here in just a moment. Again, as we've got a moment, want to thank especially Team Rohr Powerlifting for their work in the 5-bar Showdown. one of the major movers in the conception of this event. Josh Rohr and his staff have put a great work into this event. Team Rohr has a strong social media presence on Facebook and Instagram. Find them at Team Rohr, or you can also find them at teamrohr.com. Special thanks to Team Rohr for their support of the 2018 5 Bars Showdown. It's Hawkins, his third attempt at 185. He was able to work to the completion of the lift. 3 white lights, so he's on at 185.
That's a nice finish there, Brian, because in the deadlift, as we talked earlier, going 3 for 3 is so challenging, and it appeared like he maybe had 5 more pounds, but that was a pretty good third attempt.
Well, and again, it's got to be incredibly gratifying to put together a solid segment, getting yourself a good number, getting the reps in, 3 completed lifts, all's good.
Yeah, come deadlift time, you can go 3 for 3. That's a huge goal for all of us and very difficult to do.
Platform number 2, Blake Mabry making his third attempt at 220. Robert Colin Blennis about to approach here on platform number 3. We'll try to get both of these in succession. Mabry engages the lift. We'll wait on the scoring. 3 white lights, he's in at 220. Blennis did not complete his lift at 245. Back here inside the Meadowcreek Arena, home of the 2018 5 Bar Showdown, along with the Dr. Patrick Anderson. This is Brian Rushing. Dr. Anderson, I guess I'll put you on the spot partially here in just a moment by kind of asking you, as you get through this 2-day event, what are some of the things that you specifically look for as it relates as to some of the highlights that you expect to see for the event this weekend?
Well, Dennis Cornelius clearly has been the star of the show. An 892-pound squat is world class, to say the least. He already smoked his opening deadlift, giving him a 2160 total. But Matt Sumner's been very impressive. We've seen tremendous lifts out of the youth division, the juniors and the teenage. So there's been great competition, and we're starting to see some battles here for placings, people trying to go for the win. But selfishly, yeah, I'm really excited to see if Dennis is going to go over 2,200 pounds. 1,000 kilos is a barrier that every powerlifter dreams about, and Dennis is not far from that today.
Stephen Jiang connected on platform number 3 with his second offering of the day. Jackie Chang was able to connect at 245, so his day comes to a close at 245 kilos. As we've got platform number 2, they're about a rotation ahead of platform number 3 as they're in their third installation of lifts. Over on platform number 3, they're in their second rotation as Nicholas Arce over on platform number 3 will engage at 275 kilos.
606 here.
See what the judges think. 3 white lights, that was impressive.
Yeah, I suspect another 10 kilos might be there. Look for him to go for 628 or so, depending on what he needs competition-wise. Where we are, we don't have the full score sheet, so I can't tell you if somebody needs an exact weight. I can just estimate off of what they pull, what their next attempt should be.
Over on platform number 3, Logan Barrett make his second attempt.
628, and this shows how tough this competition is, Brian. This is just to move him into 10th place. So you're seeing a guy pull 628 pounds to just get into the top 10. Yeah, that's impressive.
Very high cotton inside this arena this afternoon as the 285 connects. So Barrett gets his second lift as DeCarlo Miles will come up on platform number 3 here. 287 and a half is what he'll be going at.
And for those of you at home, when we're giving you the placings in this competition, there are categories for the money. So these are lifters going for the heavyweight on platform 3 or the lightweight prize money of $350.
Miles is on at 287 and a half. Now Micah Nibbs, his second attempt at 250. 3 red lights, so he is going to have to get a qualifying score on his final attempt, or he bombs out in the deadlift. So we'll have, as you can see us here in the 2018 5-bar Showdown. So glad that you could join us this afternoon, as we got off to a bit of a late start because of the weather that rolled through the Atlanta area. We were able to bring you the action now. We'll have a second afternoon session coming up later on today, and then we'll have 2 sessions coming up on Sunday.
And we got clear skies, Brian, so there won't be any more power outages. It's perfect powerlifting weather. As you said, it's an indoor sport, but this is perfect weather to be doing some big weights.
Shinerman cannot connect at 252 and a half there. So he comes up a little gingerly from his lift. Keith Osayande not able to complete his lift on number 3. You saw that just before. Now we've got Chris Costley at 290.
639 pounds.
Trying to go from 12th to 9th.
As I told you earlier, I coached Earl Hill, my training partner, against this young man, and this Chris Costley is a great deadlifter. Wait till you see this lift. Now that's going to be close. I don't know if he locked that out, Brian. Let's see what the judges say.
They liked it. 3 white lights. So Costley is in at 290.
Again, where we are all the way across opposite that platform, easily 100 feet away. So I'm going off of a screen, and it's very difficult to see a side view.
Christian Parker could not connect at 252 and a half. Jeffrey Bigham, you can see him approaching the bar right now. So he's going to tighten the belt just a smudge and try to go after 302 and a half.
Jeffrey Bigham has been a long-time military lifter, armed forces lifter, and a great deadlifter. 667 pounds, second attempt for Jeff Bigham.
Wow.
3 whites.
You got to respect that. That's impressive. Almost 667 pounds. No problem. Manuel Para-Chavez cannot connect on his final lift at 252 and a half. So now we'll see Tracy Curry come on.
Yeah, we are quickly progressing on platform 2, where they are almost done the deadlift.
Curry over on platform number 3. This young man,
672.
He looks bent on this attempt. 305 kilos. Three white lights for Curry, so he's on the board at 305 kilos. Have mercy. Viet Fifan, his third attempt at 255. He gets 3 white lights, so he's animated. And Matthew Traherne will come on. His second attempt, 320 kilos. Did you see a determined look on Traherne's face?
If you were with us about 10 minutes ago, Matt pulled a strong opener at 672. So 705, I would suspect, is well within his limits. It will be a technical lift. He's got to keep it in the groove, but if he does, I think this is within his limits. And we're going to see over 700 pulled on his third as well. Yeah, what happens with that overhand grip is once it goes, a lot of lifters can pull anything. Once it goes, it's popping right out.
So cannot connect there. That'll bring up Dennis Cornelius.
We got Drew Thompson actually pulling 600 on 2, and then Dennis getting ready on 3.
We are leading to a crescendo here in this morning segment that is stretched into the afternoon. Thompson trying to finish it up. 3 white lights. He's on at 272.5. He stays in third place.
Here's the big man, and if my math is correct, this will give him a 995 kilo total. Brian, that is 2,193 pounds. Closing in on the 1,000 kilo barrier.
Not a bad day's work.
Yeah, this is world class right here. 738 deadlift. And those folks are not legs growing out of his shoulders. We've checked them. The judges have checked. Those are his arms. They're just as big as legs.
And he eased it down.
Yeah. Dennis looked like he was being gentle with 738.
I mean, not as if there needed an exclamation point, but he caressed it to the floor.
Yeah, that's true strength. You're looking at one of the strongest power lifters on the planet. And I'd go so far as to say historically one of the strongest powerlifters who've ever lived.
Was that just to show the crowd just how in control he was there?
Dennis is always a very cerebral lifter. If you watch him for how strong he is, he doesn't seem to get crazy like a lot of lifters do. But yeah, that was unusual in how controlled he was. Now we're going to go to Matt Somner. And Matt Sommer's got 760 on the bar. 760 on the bar. This will come off the floor fast, Brian. It's all going to come down to, can he lock it out? And no problems. 800 might be there. I don't know if he'll jump that much. How about James Miller pulling 650 for the win? This is for the win. It's all going to come down to grip. Can he hold on to it? Wow. That's for first place.
3 white lights. He got it, and he is pumped. He doesn't need the belt. He just ran off.
And that would be $350.
That was like Bo Jackson in Seattle just going right up the tunnel.
Against the Raiders on Monday night. He's still running, isn't he? Yeah, that was great for James Miller. That's $350. Josh Rohr's cold, hard cash going in James's pocket. I believe we are down to just one round of deadlift attempts.
Platform number 3, Robert Colin Blennis will get his third attempt. As we're
Platform 2 still got a bar loaded, so I don't know if somebody's getting a repeat attempt. I thought we were done pulling on 2. We'll see.
Blennis cannot complete at 245. So his day comes to a close. As we're wrapping up the final leg of this morning's segment here, so glad that you could join us today. Stephen Leone will get his third opportunity at 247.5. Leone tightens the belt. And now engages the lift and can't complete it. So his day has come to a close. He cannot finish on a high note at 247.5. Folks, we want to thank Williams Weightlifting USA as being a major piece of this year's 2018 5-Bar Showdown, located in Beaufort, Georgia. Caleb Williams is one of the founding fathers of the event. You can find out more about Williams Weightlifting USA by going to the website, williamsweightlifting.com. That's williamsweightlifting.com, a proud partner of the 2018 5-Bar Showdown. As Stephen Jiang, his third attempt will be at 272.5. As Jiang looking to fire himself up for this lift.
This is 600. No wonder he's fired up. Overhand.
An overhand grip when we saw the tape on the thumbs. So apparently the hook is what he's incorporating.
Yeah, that hook grip puts a tremendous amount of strain on your thumbs. Now, that appeared like something maybe in his left knee. It was hard to tell whether it was the knee. It could have been the quad or the adductor muscle. Something tweaked on his left side.
So Jiang.
Yeah, if you're family or friends of him, we'll give you a little update. Right now, he's sitting up.
Platform number 2, as you can tell, getting set up for the afternoon segment.
They are helping him back up. We're just not showing it until we know what's going on. But if you're a family member or friend he is up and standing. It does appear like it was his left knee. He's walking off with assistance. So he's clearly got some pain on the left leg.
So back on platform number 3, we'll have Nicholas Arce. Now we do not see a weight, so it looks like that Arce may try to time out here, even though I see him there. He's got now a lift on the board of 285. So apparently a change was made. Now the lift at 285, Nicholas Arce with an opportunity here, if he completes the lift at the moment, would go into 5th place. So a lot of this is going to be very nimble here in this 3rd rotation. So we'll see a lot of places toggling back and forth at the top.
Yeah, this goes into what we talked about earlier, Brian, where you can actually change your 3rd attempt deadlift twice. And like you said, there's a little bit of sandbagging and a little bit of psychology where you put a weight in just to mess with your opponent.
But Arce now with 285 on the bar will have his final attempt of this afternoon.
And this is for 5th place. 628, appears like an overhand. No, he is cross grip on the sumo. Very narrow grip though. That appears good to me there, Brian.
We'll see what the judges say. He gives a bow.
Lights.
And after some deliberation,
they're not giving us any lights.
Perhaps the 2 white lights out of 3, so the lift counts. So Arce now on the board at 285, and that will give way for Keith Osayande, who will be attempting 290 kilos. As we are wrapping up our opening segment of the day, Brian Rushing here with the doctor, Patrick Anderson. So glad that you could join us today. What has been an exciting first segment of action here as part of the 2018 5-bar Showdown. I know that here in just a moment we'll have the final few lifts. Dr. Anderson, I guess the question that I would ask you is, with these few lifts that we have left, the crowd has got to know that we're going to reach a crescendo, a fever pitch here in just a little bit with something that could be something that maybe nobody expected to see today with some of the numbers that are going to be pumped out.
Absolutely, Brian. I mean, we're looking at Matt Sommer pulled 760 with room to spare. I don't know if he'll go all the way to 800, but I suspect he's going to be very close to it. And then you have Dennis Cornelius, if he chooses to go over the 2,200-pound barrier. As you said, he gently lifted 738 and then was nice enough to gently set it back down. There's no question he's got the strength in him. I'm not sure what his goals are, because as crazy as this is going to sound, Dennis is on the schedule to come back tomorrow morning and do 9 more attempts in equipment. So I wouldn't put anything past him.
But we're getting to the point to where you talk about impressive misses. Even if these things are missed, they become really impressive misses.
How about Logan Barrett with 639? And he is going to have to fight this to lock out. I think this lift is going to count. That might be the most excellent attempt selection, the perfect attempt. As they like to say in this sport of ours, Brian, if he had a little bit extra chalk on the bar, he might not have been able to lock that out.
So he maxed it out there, really fought through it, and was able to connect on the lift. As he gets his final lift to go, that's going to set up Chris Costley at 297.5 coming up. For those of you that are aware, 655, almost 656 pounds, as we'll take a look at Costley.
My training partner, Earl Hill, if you're at home watching this, you need to get your deadlift moving if you're going to go against this guy. I know your deadlift's moving, but you better step it up because 655, this is a big-time pull. An extra wide sumo stance. At this point, technique is at a premium. A little bit too much. Maybe 644 would have gone today.
It's costly. Not able to connect there. And that'll set up DeCarlo Miles for his final offering, which will be 300 kilos. Flat.
So how about this here, Brian? The ruling that we're getting is Josh Rohr has stated from this point on of this session, it's 661 or go home. 300 kilos or go home. You're not even welcome on the platform if you can't pull 661. And we've still probably got 5 lifters left.
Well, in this building for this segment, we are watching the elites of the elites when it comes to the deadlift.
Yeah, these are all big-time deadlifters.
And Miles taking a page out of Cornelius' book with the softer drop there.
And now it's almost 700 to go home, 699. These are all nationally ranked deadlifters.
Tracy Curry will step to the platform. You can see him there in the screen. And this young man lifts angry.
Yeah, and he looks like he's got the build for 700-pound deadlift. I mean, he's definitely got muscles.
Well, he looks like he's going to will himself to almost 700 pounds.
Yeah, he almost looks like he could scare the weight up just by giving it an angry look. There are very few people in this room who have ever pulled 700 pounds. This is 699.97. It is right at 700 for Tracy Curry.
We'll see what the judges say. 3 white lights. He is on the board at 317 and a half.
I suspect that was a personal record, and that's a lift he has probably been gunning for quite a while.
And the anger seemed to go away to a bit of accomplishment and maybe some excitement for Curry, and reasonably so.
Well, and another big one here, 700 pounds, again, 699 for Jeff Bigham.
Jeffrey Bigham on this day has an opportunity to put a cherry on top, and he can't complete it.
I believe we're down to just the last 3, assuming Matt and Dennis are taking their attempts. I think it's Matt Traherne, Matt Sommer, and Dennis Cornelius, if they all are doing. Sometimes at this point in the competition, Brian, you'll have people pass their 3rd attempt deadlifts, especially if they've got the meet one. So we'll see what's going on. Looks like Matt's got 705. Now, if you remember on his, he was very explosive, but it popped out at the top grip. So we'll have to see if he can hold on to this one. He's relatively calm considering he's got 705 in front of him.
Now, Dr. Anderson, the question that I would ask you, from the time that you leave the drape area to actually get to the bar, what are some of the things that goes through the mind of the likes of Matthew Traherne as it relates to this lift?
Well, and the interesting thing is, for me, I was very cerebral, so I would be thinking of my cues. I'd have certain cues of what I need to do. Typically for me, it was getting a very tight start position so that I could be in the right place. But then again, you have a world-class lifter like Jennifer Thompson. I don't know if she's watching, but I interviewed her one time and I asked her that exact question, looking for the big secret and meaning of life, this amazing 300-plus pound bencher in the female Raw division. And she said to me, I don't think about anything. I just lift the weight. And I said, well, maybe that's why you're so great. So it's a situation where everyone is a little bit different. And I'm not 100% sure in Matt's case, but I know for me it's much more about technique and making sure I'm doing the lift properly.
Well, Traherne not able to complete the lift. Dennis Cornelius has on the board 340 kilos. Just about a quarter less, literally a coin less of 750 pounds.
And here we go with Dennis Cornelius looking to go over the 1,000-kilo barrier. I believe if my math is correct, this is for 1,005 kilos, what will be 2215 total. He's got 749 on the bar. He's definitely got the strength here, Brian. It's all going to come down to the groove. He's just got to keep it in close and hold it, and that's a good lift, folks. Let's set the stage for you. That's 892 squat. That's 562 bench. That's a 750 deadlift.
And again, just how gentle he was with allowing it to descend. That was phenomenal.
Actually, I was doing the math wrong. Now I heard Gino say it. That was 1,000 kilos even. I was wondering why he went to 1,005. I was off because I was crediting him his third bench. His actual total was exactly 1,000 kilos. 892, 562, 750 deadlift. 1,000 kilos.
As we prepare for this lift from Matt Sommer, want to thank SBD Apparel, Roswell Barbell, Elite Iron Sports, Active Care Atlanta Chiropractic, and New Care Physical Therapy for all their help with this morning's first segment.
Now, I don't want to be a Monday morning quarterback, so I'm going to tell you in advance, I think this is a little bit much, but he will explode off the floor. There will not be a problem getting the bar to his knees. It's all going to come, is he going to be able to lock it out? I think it's going to be close. He's looked very explosive all day, though. I think he's got it. His grip was opening, but I think he got the down. Let's see what the judges say.
2 out of 3.
2-1. See, and it was interesting because I thought he might not lock it out. He actually locked it out, and then it was a situation where the judges turned it down. It did appear like his hand was opening.
And with that, we come to the end of this first segment. Final thoughts, Dr. Anderson.
Well, 1,000 kilos for Dennis Cornelius is clearly the star of the show. He's already the world record holder in the squat and the total. He comes to this meet. We're assuming he's going to be back here tomorrow, as hard as it is to believe he's going to do 9 more attempts. But he's clearly the star of the show. But Matt Traherne put on a great meet. Matt Sommer, 810 squat, nearly an 804 deadlift. We saw some amazing lifts. Some of the lifts we saw, James Miller, a 650 deadlift to take the money in the lightweight category. Yeah, we're off to a really good show. Considering that the storm set us back a little, we finished pretty strong. We're much like a lifter who struggled in the squat, got going in the bench, and then hit 3 deadlifts there,
Absolutely.
Brian.
A storm started the day, and a storm wrapped it up here as Dennis Cornelius became the millennial man with 1,000 kilos throughout the course of this evening. As we thank you so much for tuning in, don't forget there's an afternoon segment coming up, and then we've got 2 segments tomorrow as we're just getting started here in the metro Atlanta area. For Dr. Patrick Anderson, this is Brian Rushing saying thank you for tuning in to this opening segment of the 2018 5-Bar Showdown. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next time.